Hello and welcome to the Weekly Stuff Podcast with Jonathan Lack.
And Sean Chapman.
We are here as always to talk about stuff. This week on the show, games, so many games.
Yes, it is the January of video games that was foretold in prophecy eons ago, and every video game has come out, and we have played a couple of them.
Here are two games we will be talking about in some amount of depth today. I'm not sure how much because we've played different levels, but Dragon Ball FighterZ.
Yes, that came out on Friday.
Quick review, it's good.
It's really fucking good.
All right, it's cool. If you like Dragon Ball, you probably own it already. If not, what you doing?
Yeah, it is. I think already the most bot fighting game in Steam ever.
Oh wow!
I saw that. It's it has 40,000 consecutive players, which is 30,000 more than Tekken 7 and Street Fighter 5.
Well, then I can't wait for Dragon Ball FighterZ 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Exactly.
Anyway, so we've got that. We've got Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth Hacker's Memory.
Yes.
Which we had talked about a little bit last week, but it had just come out. Big JRPG. Dragon Ball's only been out a couple days, but it's a fighting game. It's easier to get a feel for it.
Yeah.
Digimon, though, we've played a lot more of. I've played about 20 hours of it. How much have you played?
Hours-wise, I'm not sure. I'm at, chapter 10 or 11. I'm at the turning point in the middle of the game,
You're
basically.
much further than me. I'm on chapter 6.
Well, I mean, because you're now at where I was at last week on the podcast, because you hadn't really played it much then.
I haven't still had a ton of time with it, but I've been, stealing every spare moment to fucking play it. And I'll give my spoiler-free review right here. This game is already the recipient of my 2018 Game So Nice I Bought It Twice award.
Great.
Because I bought it for the PS Vita as well.
All right.
And
which is you did that for the last one as well, right?
I did, and it's just a fun way to play it. They are PS Vita games at their heart, They feel very good on that system. It's fun to go back and forth. It does feel 2 years later after the advent of the Nintendo Switch extra rip-offy.
Right.
But I actually got it. We're in the process of moving. And I found my old Xbox 360 and was able to trade that in for a good amount, actually, surprisingly. It was enough to buy Digimon Story for the Vita.
There you go.
So there you go. And I should say that's not my only 360 either. It was my old one, not my nicer one that doesn't red ring. This was a 360 that didn't have Wi-Fi,
Right, yeah.
That kind of 360. So, but got some money for it, got some Digimon for it. I think that's a good trade.
Yes, I agree.
I don't know under what universe I would have plugged that thing in again. So, there you go. But yeah, so Digimon's great. Dragon Ball's great. We're going to talk about all of that. Games we will not be talking about on the podcast this week. Monster Hunter World.
Yeah, as much as I want to play that, I've already played 2 video games simultaneously, which is something I do not like doing.
No. Celeste, which I think looks amazing and I really want to play.
Yeah.
Got amazing reviews. Mm-hmm. Again, two games is already one too many at once. Anything else that we're forgetting about that's out right now?
Right now, I don't think so, but there's just more immediately
on the rise
of
Lost Sphere, I want to play.
Oh, yeah.
The new Tokyo RPG Factory game. So, yes, we will probably get to these at some point, but, go elsewhere if you want to hear reviews of those.
Yeah, everybody has to sort of compartmentalize this January, which is something that when you are talking about video games, you usually don't have to do. Usually it's hey, it's January, I get to play Yakuza 0 for the entire month or something. It's fantastic.
Yeah, we'll talk about a couple other little things today, some news items, but this is just kind of a nice week to talk about some video games for the first major time this month, so that should be good.
Yep.
Anything else to say before we get started, Sean?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I really liked our episode last week on Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
Me too.
We'll have more of those coming out, but I think that was good. Already gotten some good reception for that. So, yeah. And no hate mail yet.
Yes.
We proudly declared that we're okay with Jar Jar.
I think we have set up our audience to be able to expect that from us, maybe. This is if we had a gigantic 1 million listeners and just drop that out there, I think we'd get the hate mail.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
We're in enough of a cocoon over here. Yeah. It's nice.
But in case you missed the last episode, I'll say it again, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace is a good movie.
Very good movie. We like it. Yeah. All right, let's see. Stuff. Sean, you got any stuff to talk about?
I've got a decent bit of stuff. First up is there's something that I had forgotten to do this. There's a good reason I forgot to do this, but I forgot to do this on last week's podcast. Jonathan, it is time to take what is probably a surprise trip down to Sean's Beta Corner.
It's Sean's Beta Corner, yeah.
Hello and welcome to Sean's Beta Corner. I'm Sean, and this is my Beta Corner where you check out the latest and greatest in the hot world of video game betas, and this is the first time that intro is not particularly appropriate because last week, about like a day before we recorded the podcast last week, the Metal Gear Survive beta went up on the PlayStation Network, and I played maybe about 20 minutes of it and decided I cannot play this anymore. That is an impossible video game to understand, particularly in a beta format. And so it's like I recognize that the way the beta was structured, it was basically for the online component, so it did not have any story mode, it had basically no tutorial. It just sort of like dropped you into this really weird lobby, and you could just pick, I think there were maybe 2 missions, but I only did the beginning of one, and it was some weird like survival wave-based bullshit where you go and hold down a point and a bunch of zombies come and attack that point, and you just like smash up shit and make fences and put up fences, and then you hit zombies in the face with a rusty pipe, basically. And it's a really weird game because they just took Metal Gear Solid 5 and then they realized, oh, games like DayZ and shit were popular 5 years ago, so let's take Metal Gear Solid 5 and make one of those, because it is 100% one of those. Insofar as it also just feels completely unfinished. Obviously, it's a beta. That game is out in like a month, presumably.
Yeah, the word beta doesn't mean what it used to mean.
Yeah, it's a network beta, not a like game design beta, right?
Yes.
And so it's like, but it feels like it's a like early access PC game that like is never actually going to come out because they're going to keep on like releasing incremental updates and never actually refine the shit that they put out 5 years ago, the way that like a game like DayZ works or Ark Survival, like all those games.
That's the hot thing right now for reasons that will forever elude me.
Yeah, so it just feels like they really fucked up because PUBG came out last year and completely like changed that thing. Like
right.
It was before PUBG, it was all about on like PC, it was all about those weird survival games like Rust and DayZ and Ark and all those. And then PUBG came out and was like had some of the elements of those games, but like focused into a specific multiplayer experience, and people really gravitated to that. And now I assume nobody gives a shit about all those other games before PUBG.
Hey, I cannot wait in 2022 for Metal Gear Battle Royale.
Exactly, yeah. With Konami has their finger on the pulse of the video game industry 3 years too late. And for me, the funniest thing about the Metal Gear Survive beta was like half of the time of me playing the game was just trying to figure out how the fuck to invert the y-axis, because you couldn't do it in-game, you could only do it at like the title menu, which I didn't even realize when I was at the title menu that there was an options screen there. So I was like in the middle of the game going through, because what made it particularly difficult is it being this weird survival game where you're crafting like fences and weapons and like all like, there's like 5 different kinds of weapons you can craft, or like items you can craft. There's 100 different menus that you can dig into. So trying to like figure out, am I just not finding the configuration menu, or does it just not exist in this video game, was about a 10-minute process before I decided to back out to the title screen. Found you could invert the y-axis, and like, okay, now finally I can play Metal Gear Survive. And then I proceeded to kill like a dozen zombies by hitting them in the face with a rusty pipe, and it was like, this engine, this game was not meant to do this. Like, Metal Gear Solid 5 was a weird game in a lot of ways, but it had really solid core gameplay, and like, there is an idea out there for a game that takes the foundation of Metal Gear Solid 5 and does something different with it that would be interesting, and this is not that game at all.
So, does it have anything else to do with Metal Gear? What is it? Like,
I mean, you play as a Diamond Dogs crew member who gets sucked into a wormhole, into an alternate dimension.
Always wormholes. Always
Yes.
alternate dimensions.
Yeah, I have no idea of like what amount of story there will be in the actual game. Again, this didn't really have any story stuff in it, really. It was just a sort of like random online mission that you could do. So I don't know if fucking like Snake shows up at some time in this game and just like flips a middle finger to the camera and says like, give me some money. I have no idea. I have no idea what else this has to do with Metal Gear.
It really is one of the most cynical cash grabs I've ever heard of. Konami saying, okay, what's hot 3 years ago? Zombie survival shitty games on PC.
Yeah.
Like, okay, what brand do we have that's popular enough that we could shove that onto?
Yeah.
Metal Gear?
It's like, and what game engine did we probably spend like tens of millions of dollars developing and investing in with, and then did exactly one game with it, and then just basically fired 90% of the development team? is like they had that Fox engine, and when I that was like for me that was like the most striking thing about starting up the Metal Gear Survive beta was the Fox engine logo at the top of it. I'm like, oh right, they pimped the shit out of that engine at the very beginning of like promoting Metal Gear Solid 5, and it's a really awesome engine based on the game that they made. But they only made the one game with this. It's like, there's something about Metal Gear Survive that literally feels like it's just the, like, economist or, like, financial person working for Konami looked at the balance sheet, saw that they were deep in the red on, like, the R&D costs with the Fox engine and said, we gotta do something with it. And then it's just threw a fucking dart at a video game genre list on a wall. It's like, zombie survival. Does that have anything to do with the strengths of Metal Gear Solid 5? Not at all, but let's do it anyways.
I think step one in that, Sean, was someone asked, can we make pachinko out of it? And they said no, and they're like,
They said, we already are.
Okay.
We have to do something else, too.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
All right, well, cool. If we want to go over to Jonathan's beanbag in Sean's beta corner.
Jonathan's beanbag, John's beta corner.
I don't actually like beanbags, but
okay.
It seemed evocative for the setting.
Okay.
I'm going to talk about a beta I didn't play.
Okay.
but just
this is a very different segment.
Yes. No, I wanted to play the beta for Sea of Thieves that was this week.
Oh, right, yeah.
But I completely forgot it was going to happen, and by the time it started, I had already packed up my Xbox One because, again, we're moving. It's like I'm using my PS4. I am not actually actively using my Switch at the moment, but I don't need to pack it up yet. It's easy to just hang around with, and I might want to play something on it, you know. And then it's like, all right, what am I going to start packing up? It's like, I'm not doing anything with that Xbox.
Yeah.
So I went in the box, and then heard about the Sea of Thieves beta, and kind of looked over to this, just, you know, the sea of boxes, and I was like, I don't want to get it out. I just, you know, if I hear it's good, I'll play it. But then, you know, no one said anything good about that beta, so...
Yeah, like, I have no idea, like, what people think of the game. All I know is that it was very popular on Twitch while the beta was going. And that's the only thing I know about it.
Yeah, I heard it was pretty rough from a technical standpoint.
Yeah, there's something about that game that I just feel like... I want to play it just to know what it is, because I feel like every time I see people talking about it, even though now, like, it's out in the open and people have had their hands on this closed beta thing, like... Even then, when I read the shit that people write about it, they still like it feels like everyone is writing about a different fucking video game. I have no idea what they're talking about.
It's very bizarre, and it's also in this weird position. And we're going to talk about this with a news item later, but Sea of Thieves has suddenly, because Microsoft is going through, I would say, a pretty historically massive dry spell for first-party games. Like, I don't think there really has ever been an analog for this. Like, it's usually the other way around, where your third-party support dries up, and then you're like, okay, let's go into overdrive making some first-party games here. But that's not the case at all. Their third-party support is fine, and they're not making shit over here.
Yeah.
And so suddenly, the linchpin title of their first half of 2018 is fucking Sea of Thieves. And it's like, I think this game could flourish if it were more of an underdog, but it doesn't get to be that. It's the one, like, Microsoft Studios thing they have to plaster on every advertisement from here until... Like, literally, they don't even have other ones dated. The other two that we even know about are State of Decay 2 and Crackdown 3, neither of which are dated, one of which we've already predicted might never come out.
Yes.
So, bizarre. But anyway, yeah.
I'm sure there will be a Forza in there somewhere.
Eventually,
by then, Forza Horizon will be out this year, because
probably
Motorsport was last year.
Yeah, which, you know, I'm looking forward to, I guess. But yeah. Are we done with Sean's Beta Corner for now?
Yes, I think that is it. Probably all of the Metal Gear Survive talk on this podcast is probably just finished, because I'm not fucking going to play that game.
All right, my quick Doctor Who check-in.
Okay.
Because I've only had time to watch 2 Doctor Who stories since last week, and it's made me very sad, because I'd like to watch more Doctor Who, but I'm very busy right now.
Yeah.
And having 2 fucking video games in the mix doesn't help. But I'm in Season 15, the first Graham Williams season.
Yeah.
I've seen Horror of Fang Rock. Which is
that's
really good.
Yeah.
That is a candidate for best directed episode of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
It's at least in the like nomination field. That's Patty Russell at a lighthouse. So much fog. They must have gone to every other BBC production at the time and been like, we need your fog.
Yeah.
We're bringing it over here. Great episode, great story. Probably the best, one of the best, at least, Terrence Dicks scripts. I think the only real... Because Terrence Dicks did a ton for Doctor Who, obviously. He doesn't have that many episodes credited to him. The only other one that feels to me like that significant is probably the War Games.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But it's great. So I would highly recommend that one. Just a good kind of horror Doctor Who episode. Definitely feels like kind of the last gasp of the Philip Hinchcliffe era.
Yeah,
you know?
it definitely still has that like horror gothic kind of feel to it.
I mean, literally, it is the rare class of Doctor Who story where not only do multiple people die, every character we meet who is not the Doctor or his companion are dead at the end of that story.
Yeah.
Every single one. It's amazing. Anyway, and then the second one I've seen is The Invasion of Time. No, not The Invasion of Time. Sorry. That's the end of that season. The Invisible Enemy, which is the introduction of K9, which is the craziest fucking Doctor Who I have ever seen.
It's pretty fucking insane,
We
right?
might have to pick that for a future podcast because
Yeah.
it is, like, by the end of episode 2, the Doctor has cloned himself and Leela, shrunk the clones down, and had a Doctor inject the clones into his own cerebral cortex so they can go into his brain and fight evil antibodies.
Yeah.
It is an amazing serial. It is an insane serial. And I actually had not known this. So that's a Bob Baker, Dave Martin episode. They did a ton in this era, Third, Fourth Doctor. Bob Baker went on his own. He's the writer of the Wallace and Gromit movies. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that. That's the first time I kind of saw that in him.
Yeah.
That kind of zany, but also very British humor.
Yeah, no, The Invisible Enemy is always... Like I think you could probably go back to when we were reviewing Season 8 with Peter Capaldi and Into the Dalek, and I probably tried to half feverishly explain the basic setup for the premise of the Invisible Enemy on that podcast, because it feels like the Invisible Enemy is a dream that the writer for Into the Dalek had that inspired writing Into the Dalek, which is a much more sane version of that kind of Honey I Shrunk the Kids or Magic School Bus kind of plot of injecting a tiny person into another person.
Because also that's the premise of Into the Dalek. It's only one part of
That's true.
the Invisible Enemy.
It's to me, it's the most memorable part of that episode outside of K9 himself.
K9's great. The other thing I want to... So I need to move on. My next one to watch is Image of the Fendal, and I'm excited to see the rest of these.
Yeah.
And there's a Robert Holmes script coming up, and then I've got the Key to Time season. Yeah. I've packed up all my Doctor Who DVDs for the moment, except I've got my Key to Time box set, because I'm very close, and I've left it out. But anyway, having a lot of fun with it. The thing I want to say, Leela... This is I've seen 5 stories with Leela. 5 of her, I think 9 she has total in the TV series. She is one of the best written companions, I think, in the sense of how she is used in stories. Because those 5 stories I've seen so far, I don't think one of them could work at pretty much at all, or at least as well as it does without Leela. Even something like Horror of Fang Rock, which is the easiest one you could imagine, slotting a Sarah Jane in of those 5 so far. Her role in it is very specifically Leela, her as the savage woman who goes for, she kills someone at the beginning of that story, I think. They really took the challenge of, we're going to do a really different type of companion, and not only are we going to write her very uniquely, the stories are going to change because of this new dynamic, and that is a fascinating thing. And they didn't miss a beat with that at all in the producer transition, at least in how well they're using Leela. So I just want to say that's a fascinating era for me on that level, because... even today, and in a lot of classic Who, companions often, really help make a story sing, but you could also say, you could probably slot a different companion in here, and it would work just as well in some ways. It feels a lot like Clara Season 9 for Modern Who, of these stories are animated by that character being there.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting dynamic.
And then it obviously, we talked about this the last time we talked about Leela, but it is just that, having a character that is so disassociated with Earth is fantastic, and it's an interesting place for the show to be in, that it's never outside of some later Fourth Doctor companions, it never does that again. Mm-hmm. And it's something that's I desperately want Doctor Who to try that again.
It also really pushes Tom Baker in a different direction. His performance at this point takes... it doesn't become a different performance, but it definitely takes a sharp turn once Sarah Jane leaves and he doesn't have someone who is a true friend with him. He's colder in some ways. He's more kind of egotistic, but you also, when the warmth comes through, you see where it's coming from in different ways. It's a really interesting change-up, and I'm having so much fun.
Yeah, and then now you have K9 with you for the future stories. K9. I like K9 and Leela are a good pair.
Well, Leela just loves... Leela's the one who wants to take K9 with them. Yeah. The Doctor wouldn't have even asked, I don't think.
No, I don't think the Doctor doesn't want a tin dog just following him around all over the place, especially because the tin dog, let's be honest, is smarter than he is.
My favorite thing and I assume it goes throughout K9's tenure, is that every time K9 goes into the TARDIS, they either have to pan up above his body or cut, because the TARDIS has a ridge, so there's no way K9, who is flat, can get in there, and so you just assume he has some mechanism that gets him in the TARDIS that we never see.
Yeah, no, it's something that the Doctor really needs to make the TARDIS accessible to K9.
It should have a little doggy ramp.
It's just like it's like those minivans or whatever. It's like and it just takes like 3 minutes to fully settle. K9 gets on it, comes up. It's a great way to sort of pad out the episodes, because sometimes they need an excuse to pad out some of the episodes. Let's be honest.
Chris Chibnall, I know you're already working on the new season, but the episodes are going to be a little longer, I know. You've already got 3 companions. If you want to add K9, free pitch we've just given you for how to do that. Yeah. Indeed. All right. You want to move on to some news, Sean?
What's going on in the news, Jonathan?
All right. First off, God of War, which amazingly we've gotten to the release. It's just being called God of War. We'll talk about that in a second. Titles make no sense to me anymore. It has been officially announced for release on April 20th after months of speculation, because we knew it was coming out in this range, but there were people like, is it June 30th? Someone had said like around this area in April, some people had May, and it was like all these conflicting reports, but it's coming out officially 4/20. Blaze up and play some God of War.
Yep, you can play God of War and sit in your cardboard, whatever, with the Nintendo. What is it, Labo? Because that's also coming out on 4/20.
Oh, all right, nice.
Anyway. Smoke that cardboard and smoke some Viking gods.
Yes. And also, I should say, I made a tweet just, like, thanking the studio for not releasing it in a busier month. Like, April is pretty low. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, thank God I can play this. And Santa Monica Studios liked my tweet, which I found very funny.
There you go. I mean, I wonder, because it is that, that's pretty close to, like, release, because they didn't even, like, they never officially said, like, Q1 2018 or anything like that. They had only ever said 2018, and it was only just, like, rumor and speculation and probably, like, insider info indicating that it would be early 2018. And I think it's interesting that they just, like, wait until we're pretty close and then they just drop the date. So I wonder how much of that is, like, not wanting to announce it too early and then obviously have the game be delayed, which is entirely possible. I think there's 100% a possibility that this game is still delayed.
Well, we're close enough, though. Like this,
we're close, but the games have been delayed from even closer to their release dates before.
It absolutely has. But also, like, compare this to like the 7 different dates they gave for Uncharted 4.
Yeah,
I feel like that's part of the lesson Sony has learned is like wait until they're done with the fucking game.
But I legitimately wonder how much of it is them looking at that sort of like mid-April spot and be like, that's a good. We can drop this game whenever we want, and January and February are fucking hell this year.
March even more so.
Yeah, so let's put it in the middle of April.
I'm excited. Look, it has claimed its spot. It'll have my attention. I am excited. I've never played a God of War game. I wish this was called, God of War 4 or God of War Goes to Greece or something like that.
God of War leaves Greece.
Leaves Greece, yes. Right. This is Roman now.
Right? No, we're in the Norse
stuff, okay.
Because it's Odin and Thor and Loki and Yggdrasil and all that kind of stuff.
Either way, I just know there's going to be a point in the game where I want to look something up, and I Google God of War something, and it just gives me the wiki for the first game, and it'll take me 5 minutes to realize that, and just name your fucking games different titles.
We're in a post-Doom 2016 world, Jonathan. We refer to every video game by its title, and then its year of release.
Doom is the only game that can get away with that for me, because it's got an attitude to it that made that work.
Yeah.
But it's just, I'm done with it. Like the fucking Ghostbusters movie, which I like. The only thing I don't like about it is that it's just called Ghostbusters because it makes it confusing.
Yep.
There's this, Doom did it, but I'm not as annoyed with it. And there's just a ton. This is how we do it now. We've had like 5 Fantastic Four movies just called Fantastic Four.
I'm looking forward to the next Final Fantasy game that it is just called Final Fantasy. Like, fuck it. We're high up with numbers. Fuck it.
That would not be surprising.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, another piece of video game news. We've kind of got a video game block here. Xbox Game Pass, which is something we haven't really talked about on here much because it hasn't felt that relevant. It's sort of like Xbox trying to experiment with creating a Netflix for games sort of thing, where you pay a monthly fee, it's like $10 a month, and you get a lineup of games that you can download and play as much as you want. Sort of like PS Plus or Xbox Live Games with Gold on steroids, and it's like an existing growing library. Definitely, like if you're a casual gamer, seems like a pretty good deal. There's a lot of, they've got all their first party stuff in there at this point. I was never super interested in it, but they have announced a change that Xbox Games Pass will now include on day one every Microsoft Studios game. So basically every first-party Xbox release, which we'll talk about in a second. But for now, that is a pretty bold, audacious thing to announce. I'm not sure how the business structure works. We'll talk about that too. But very, very interesting. Shows that they are more invested in making this service a thing than I think we previously thought. What's your reaction to it, Sean?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting move because it obviously it's like thinking about the economics behind it is interesting, and I think for me the thing that motivates it is probably, I am guessing that from this point forward, and it's not just this point forward because it's been the case since the launch of the Xbox One, but Microsoft has been so invested in the games as a service concept. Especially even more so than Sony, which Sony has a couple of games, they have multiplayer and Uncharted and stuff like that. But, God of War does not seem like that's going to have a big online component and, fucking booster packs or something for the multiplayer wave-based survival mode. That's, Sony seems like it has a broader range of games that it's releasing, whereas Microsoft has typically had really sort of games as a service focused releases this generation. Look at Halo 5 is the perfect example for me, where Halo 5 was doing the loot box bullshit before it was it's a loot box hipster or something. It was doing it before it was popular. And so I suspect Microsoft's strategy with this is that they're we will eat the $50 or whatever, or more if they somehow release 2 games in 1 month.
That's not happening anytime soon.
But they will eat whatever they lose on the subscription versus the full price game, because they just want to get more people in the game to engage with the microtransactions and that model. I suspect that's what their idea is.
Yeah. Here's the thing, though. It would make so much more sense if they had more games. And this is where it's a real discussion, because on the one hand, I saw this and first I was actually confused, because just reading the headline, what I thought it meant was that on a game's release day, you'll be able to play it as a demo if you have Games Pass, because that just seemed more sane to me. Yeah. But that's not what it is. You just have the fucking game. And on one hand, I'm okay, cool. Now I can try Sea of Thieves, because I can just buy this for a month, play it as much as I want, and then I can put it, it's like renting the game.
Or it's like EA Access and Star Wars Battlefront.
Exactly, which I have. My brother has done that too on PC, where he will get EA Access for 1 month increments here and there to try something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's nice that I'll be able to play Sea of Thieves without plopping down $60. Although again, it's they're one exclusive and they're going to be eating probably significant costs on that. But they do want people in the program, I guess. And as you say, all these games are probably going to have significant, games as service. I hate that term, but that sort of...
It's the term we have going forward.
I know. Even though there are such limited success stories. This is the topic we probably need to do at some point. This is, I think, one of those myths that, it happens in isolation frequently enough that people think it's a trend when I'm not sure it's actually a trend in console gaming.
I mean, and it's the kind of thing that you can't have that many simultaneous games of service success stories. You can only have a few on the scale that a company would want them to be at.
Exactly. And that clearly the console success stories of this generation are going to be the PS4 and the Nintendo Switch, which don't do that. So it's an interesting thing. But yeah, so that's interesting. But the most fascinating thing about this to me is you look at their key art for this announcement. Over 100 games, one low monthly price, new exclusive Xbox games, and they only have 3 to show in the box, one of which is Sea of Thieves, which is theoretically coming out March 20th, 2 of which we don't know when they're coming out, Crackdown 3 and State of Decay 2. Crackdown 3, we don't even know what that game looks like. I don't think we've ever even seen gameplay of it.
They did show last E3. They showed gameplay. Okay. I know because it didn't look very good, and then they delayed the fuck out of it to Infinity and beyond.
Indeed. So that's an issue. Obviously, there will be some more that we don't know about yet. There's going to be Forza something this year. Those sorts of little things. Maybe they'll have an indie here and there. And another nice thing about it is you don't need to have an Xbox for this. It works on PC. Their commitment to having their games run on PC as well is a cool thing. But it really does, this just to me shined a harsher light than ever on the issue they're having with exclusives of this feels kind of like a shrug given their lineup, because that's just 3 games, none of which are particularly exciting and none of which seem like big system sellers,
Yeah.
And there's no other real hook to get you into this service. So it's an interesting experiment, but you would need so much more product to back this up, and we just have no idea what they're even working on.
Yeah.
Like, this is the thing that more than anything makes me believe I think this is probably the last generation for Xbox as a dedicated console thing, unless I could be totally wrong on that, because they just don't seem like they're interested in, like, these service component things that I think they would probably in the future, and Microsoft would want them to, have an easier time adapting to other formats than their own consoles, because they're just not interested in making games anymore.
Yeah, it is something like it's the PS4, Xbox One thing this generation is so weird because it's just so completely different that I feel like the competition dynamic has been in the past between consoles, because it is like if you ignored the game library completely and you just looked at like the back of box feature on the console and just like that sort of like the list of services, Microsoft would be kicking Sony's ass.
Yes, it would.
Like up and down the fucking block, because they have shit like this. They have backwards compatibility. They have all that stuff. It's like
Xbox Live is a more robust online system in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like they are constantly like giving you new shit. Like saying like here's a whole other service. Here's another way to make like to play your old games and they look better. Like they like give us $10 and you can play every fucking video game we'll ever put out. Like here you can play everything on the console and on the PC. It's like the service side of Microsoft is so spectacular.
The Elite controller, the Game Lab designs, all these things.
The problem is, this is like, especially I think for you and me, because of like how prominent Japanese game developers have been this generation. It's like there's just nothing I want to play on that fucking console. There's just not a goddamn... Like, the only one I'm kind of interested in is, like, Forza Horizon. And I'm not that passionate about a, like, racing game to just buy a console for that, you know?
I love Forza Horizon. I would not recommend you go out and buy an Xbox One for that one game.
Yeah. Whereas, like, I'm drowning in fucking video games on the PlayStation 4. And, like, obviously, FighterZ is also on Xbox One, but Digimon Story isn't. You know, it's like, and Monster Hunter is, but you know, there are lots of those Japanese games are only coming to Sony. Sony has a lot more first party stuff coming out regularly, and it's just like I want Microsoft to do better, because it would be great if Sony could have like a flame under their ass to sort of like get better on the services stuff, improve that side of it. But the critical thing you need is the game library, not the services.
Yeah, I mean, it is a significant frustration in some ways, because the PS4 is, I would say at this point, too bare bones in some ways. Like, there's a lot of gaps that I think Microsoft has shown it would be nice if Sony had, but it's very easy to overlook those things when it's like, yeah, but that's where I play my games. So like, and I actually think between that and the Nintendo Switch, which also has a pretty bare bones UI, I actually think that could be a bit of a sea change, because clearly where home consoles are concerned, gamers and casual folks who buy video game consoles, I think, are much more interested in just get the games into my veins, and I don't so much care how you do it. Just make it simple.
Video games and Netflix, and that's all it needs to be for most people.
And so I think streamlining it bare bones, like the console, I think we've learned from this generation, should get out of the way. And Xbox One has never really been about that. And they've also never had a chance to be about that, because if you have huge gaps in game releases, you have to do all these services to make up for it somehow.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing. This story, like, to me, the thing itself is much less interesting than what it signifies for Xbox and Microsoft going forward. But yeah, my Xbox is in a box right now. Not sure when it's coming out.
Yeah.
I'm sad to say.
It does make me curious for this year's E3, like what Microsoft is going to show. Because it is for like... one of the, like, there's two sort of distressing pieces to the Microsoft first party situation. One of which is that they do not have like a lot of games on the horizon, and the other is they have like nothing announced past that. So it's like there's going to be a Halo 6 at some point. They're like normally,
although much later than they would like.
Yeah, like normally the Halo 6 would be out this year,
but
it's not. It's like obviously it's not going to be, because they haven't even like officially announced it yet. But it's like I have no idea if there's going to be another Gears of War. I've like no clue, and there have been a lot of rumors that they're going to get another studio to make a new Fable game, which is like, I love Fable 1 and 2, but the idea of someone coming to Fable and like another studio making that like 6 years or something, or 7 years probably after Fable 3, it's like, no, like that's not, and that game would probably be like 2 to 3 years off anyways.
And the thing is, the longer they stay, struggling like against the tide of trying to figure out like crawl out of the hole of lack of game development they have, the more the oxygen in the room is filled with an ever-ballooning PS4 exclusive library and an insurgent Nintendo, or a resurgent Nintendo, I should say. So, there's just less and less oxygen in the room for them to get their word out, for them to get sales, all of these different issues. And it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
But it's a very weird, the Xbox One, I think in a lot of ways is a failure, but it's a weird failure in that it's not like this giant commercial disaster.
No, yeah, because it's still it's selling as well or better than the Xbox 360 was at this point.
Maybe. I mean, they don't release official statistics anymore.
That was true for a number of years. I don't know how true it is anymore. But
so it's a very interesting situation we're in. And here's my prediction for one thing we're going to get announced at E3. No Halo 6 this year. Halo Reach anniversary. It's not actually Halo Reach's anniversary, but they're going to do it. Or Halo Reach remastered. That's the Halo thing they're going to have this year because they need something.
Yeah, maybe
it's the only one they haven't redone.
Other than Halo 5 Remastered. It's there you go! Here's your new Halo game. It's the old Halo game. But all of it is on the PC now, just not weird bits of it.
I was going to say, we completely redid the campaign. It's new. Now it's good.
Yes, it's all the old missions and 10 new missions. So it's the length of a normal Halo campaign.
It has story now.
Yeah.
You don't fight that boss 5 times.
No, you fight him 20 times.
Yeah,
you fight him 2 to 3 times in each mission. By the end, because remember how they did it in Halo 5 was it was practically every time you fought them, you fought another one of them, so you're fighting 3 of them at the same time. And by the end of the new Halo 5 campaign, you're fighting 12 of them simultaneously.
Sean, remember when game releases were slow enough at the beginning of this generation that Halo 5 was on your top 10 list one year?
Yeah, it was my number 10.
That wouldn't happen anymore.
No, yeah.
Anyway, all right, here's another very interesting video game story from this week, which is that Jason Schreier, who is pretty much like the Maggie Haberman of the video game world at this point, in that he has a scoop on everything for a certain portion of his beat, published a story this week on Kotaku called BioWare Doubles Down on Anthem as Pressure Mounts. As Jason Schreier himself noted on Twitter, there is a lot of nuance to his story, hence me reading the actual headline, that was lost in all of the clickbaity redos of the article, like BioWare gasping its final breaths or something.
I love how immediately he called that, because I saw he posted it on Twitter. I caught it 3 minutes after he posted it, and he immediately tweeted like people are going to take this story and run with it, but this is what it is. It's
yes.
Okay.
So, some significant details from this story. Anthem has been sort of unofficially, in that they haven't announced it, but internally delayed until at least March 2019. They would probably hope they could go later than that, but EA might not let them because it's the end of the fiscal year. Notably, that's also what happened to Mass Effect Andromeda.
Yes.
Anyway, they have...
pay attention to what games come out in March all of a sudden.
Yes. So Anthem is not going to be coming out this year. It was on my draft from a few weeks ago. So anyway,
you swooped that one up.
I should have had it higher now that I look at it. It was my number 3 pick. Now it's damn. But anyway, my number 1 was Kingdom Hearts 3, so I'm not that,
I still think that there's a chance.
There's a chance, sure. But anyway, so it's been internally delayed, and they are working overtime on this game. They have redirected pretty much all their resources to working on Anthem. BioWare has traditionally been a 2 or 3 game studio. Right now they are operating like a single game studio. Everybody in the company is working on this with skeleton teams doing upkeep on Star Wars The Old Republic, and they are having internal discussions about dropping that just to get those few people off of it and save those resources. And there's another. This is one of the most interesting pieces, I think, actually, and most telling, is there's also a skeleton team working on the next Dragon Age after the Dragon Age 4, whatever it was completely rebooted. So they were deep into development on some kind of Dragon Age thing. It was canceled. They're redoing it. And if I can find the exact quote, the goal, these sources said, was to implement more live elements into the game, although 2 of those sources stressed that this next Dragon Age will still have a heavy focus on characters and story whenever it does come out. It's not clear what a live version of Dragon Age might look like, but EA has been public about its embrace as games as a service, and its lack of interest in releasing $60 games that do not have any sort of revenue tail. So that is an interesting part of that.
I do want to stress, because it is very, very easy to forget this, Dragon Age Inquisition had a multiplayer mode. So that game had live elements to it as well. And I'm pretty sure they sold booster packs like they did with Mass Effect 3.
Wow,
so
I forgot about that. I should
100% did.
Just a day or two ago, they did update this story. Casey Hudson had a comment on this, where he said the next Dragon Age will indeed be a live game. Regarding lots of feedback regarding Dragon Age, and I think you'll be relieved to see what the team is working on. Story and character focused, too early to talk details, but when we talk about live, it just means designing a game for continued storytelling after the main story. Love you, Casey. I don't actually find that heartening.
Yeah,
but anyway.
I think that there will be a multiplayer mode in Dragon Age 4 if it ever comes out, and
Dragon
there
Age
will
Online.
be some story DLC. Like, I think it's going to be the exact same thing that they did with Dragon Age Inquisition.
Well, we'll see. But yeah, so other important details in this is that BioWare is feeling fairly stressed about Anthem. There's a lot of pressure on the studio, both because they had this very high-profile failure in Mass Effect Andromeda, but also because there were other high-profile failures under the EA umbrella recently, such as Battlefront 2. The loot box controversy apparently has them very worried about how they're doing monetization in Anthem. We don't really know the details on that. They've also been worried by what's happened to Destiny 2, something we're also going to have to do a topic on at some point, Sean, because we haven't really talked about how Destiny 2 has kind of collapsed on itself.
It feels like it's floundering. Like, I'm curious to see, because like that happened to Destiny 1 also. It happens to most of these kinds of games.
It's doing exactly what Destiny 1 did, but without the patience we had 3 years ago.
Right.
That's what it's doing. So all of this is adding up to a situation where BioWare is definitely feeling the heat on this. Now, none of this says that the game is a disaster or that they, think it's going to be broken. Apparently, people in the studio are still worried about Frostbite, but they've done it a lot at this point. But it does say that this is a very high-profile thing and that internally they are worried that if this doesn't work, the BioWare that we know is probably gone.
Yeah.
Or will transform into something else. So this is a very all-or-nothing project for them. And, what do you think about this story, Sean?
Yeah, I think it's not that surprising to me. Like, I think, obviously we both predicted that Anthem would not come out this year because they did have a long E3 demo last year, but it was very much not a demo of a real game.
Yes.
Obviously video game development is insanely hard. If you want proof of that, you can read Jason Schreier's full book about it, Blood, Sweat, and Pixels.
Yes.
Pick it up at Amazon or whatever.
Listen to it on Audible, read by Noctis from Final Fantasy.
There you go.
We don't actually have an Audible sponsorship, but I just want to pretend we do.
Yes.
Like all the other cool podcasts.
Yes, that and that Dollar Shave Club. There you go.
Yes.
Anyways. But yeah, so, I feel like every video game has, every AAA game particularly has this story behind it, has if this game doesn't deliver, we're fucked. Because that's I think, the stakes with AAA game development is that is true of basically every game that is made. But it is it feels like, particularly after EA shut down Visceral, it's not just our studio is going to take a big hit. It's our studio might not exist anymore kind of hit. And that's distressing to me.
I understand it can feel like that for a lot of, but there are plenty of AAA developers in the West at this point. All the Sony studios have this umbrella of a healthy platform. They have some protection to do what they want to do creatively, and it feels like they're not going to go under from one thing as much.
Yeah, they're not going to go under, but it is still like Bruce Straley left Naughty Dog because he had to go from one project to another and ran himself out of the industry.
It's a tremendously unhealthy atmosphere, and I think one of the stories coming out of this generation that is coming into focus for me more with sort of every year, every couple of months, is that there is some sort of transformation going on within the Western game development industry that doesn't quite seem to be affecting Japan the same way.
Yeah.
Maybe because Japan is used to a culture of overwork, I don't know, or just because they don't make games on these same insane scales, or if they are, they do them on different timetables. We don't know as much about Japanese game development because
it's not out there that much. They don't talk about it.
Yeah, and there might be a Japanese Jason Schreier, but if so, I don't know him.
No.
Yeah.
There's not.
There's
there might be, but the access to that kind of stuff for a Japanese company is not the same.
No. So, but in the West, Western game development feels much less prominent to me this generation, critically speaking, than it did the previous generation. And Japan has, I think, picked up if there were no Japan, I think this would be a pretty lackluster game generation.
Yeah.
Because there's very little outside of, we get our annual Call of Duties and stuff, and once in a while you get these really interesting hits, and then, Sony has a lot of interesting stuff going on, but that's obviously still split between Japanese and Western studios. But then, you have these stories of these high-profile disasters. EA and Activision and Ubisoft all feel like they are going through weird chrysalis phases where they're turning into something else, and a lot of the, existing, power structures that were there don't feel like they're working anymore. EA is particularly fascinating. I read this story, and it also just felt to me like BioWare has always been the worst fit for EA. Like, I don't know why EA bought that studio. I don't know why. I mean, BioWare agreed to it because they need the money, I guess. But I don't know why they thought it would be a good fit. It has never been a comfortable fit. From the day one DLC bullshit on Mass Effect 2 and 3, to the rushing of Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition, and the Frostbite stuff, like, BioWare... Frankly, BioWare would be a great fit for, like, Microsoft right now.
Yeah.
That's what Microsoft needs, is a BioWare, because that would become, like, their Naughty Dog or something. But they don't have that, and it's EA, and it just feels like it's pushing that... They are magnetic forces. They don't go together.
Yeah.
And this is just another example of that, where, I hope Anthem is great. I also hope it's not, like, a Destiny situation where it's this group of people who are making a game and they're excited about some things and not excited about other things, and some of it is kind of corporately mandated and some of it isn't, but at the end of the day none of them agree on what the game is. That's kind of the worst case scenario for this, and who knows. I want Anthem to be great, and I want BioWare to be resurgent again, but Mass Effect Andromeda I think was a pretty big wake-up call for the whole industry.
Yeah, definitely.
And this is too.
Yeah.
So
and I think we can all look forward to Jason Schreier's next book, which is just like Frostbite Engine. Why did they do it?
Yeah.
Why did they do it? This is like, because it just feels like every fucking time a story comes out about EA, more often than not from Jason Schreier, it's like, we got fucked by that Frostbite Engine, huh, guys? Like, everybody but DICE gets fucked by the Frostbite Engine.
I mean, I'm not an accountant, and I'm not a game developer, but at a certain point, it must be cheaper just to license someone else's engine than go through this bullshit every time.
Just make it on Unreal or something. Like, it does feel like, because that was a big trend at the beginning of this generation, like going back to like the Fox Engine stuff we were talking about with Metal Gear Solid. It's like a lot of different big publishers like EA and like Konami. Well, when Konami was more of a publisher of video games, like they invested in like their own engines. That was also Capcom, like showed off whatever their new engine was at the PS4 unveil event with Deep Down, again, that never surfaced again. But yeah, that was like a big bet that a lot of studios took, was like, hey, we'll develop our own proprietary engine and we'll make everything on it. And for some studios, it seems like that maybe worked out okay. For a lot of them, it seems like no, that was not a cost-effective approach. Like that, like for EA in particular, that Frostbite engine, it seemed like really short-sighted. And it's the kind of stuff I feel like last generation you didn't hear that much about, like engine troubles, because everyone just made their games on Unreal Engine 3, and that was kind of like it, Yeah.
It was a more harmonious time. We had to sit through more logos at the beginning.
Yes, and there was lots and lots and lots of texture pop-in, because every Unreal Engine 3 game had a lot of texture pop-in, but other than that, it was fine.
Anyway, all right. 2 pieces of superhero movie news that are quick. 1, X-Men Dark Phoenix. It is a thing. Every time I read about it, I forget that it's happening. And then I'm like, are they actually... They've shot it. Oh, shit. I actually have to watch this movie at the end of this year. Fuck everything.
I'm not fully committed to that.
Okay.
I'm just saying right now, I'm not fully committed to that. I did not like that last X-Men movie.
Another weird piece of news I don't understand. They've gotten Hans Zimmer to do the score for X-Men Dark Phoenix. Why? I mean, Hans Zimmer got to eat. I assume he's got enough money. But I don't know. Like... I guess I was thinking about this, and it's like, okay, Hans Zimmer did revolutionize the superhero movie, score, 10 years ago, more than that now, with Batman Begins and The Dark Knight and stuff, although that only ever worked for a kind of narrow slim of type of blockbuster. Largely now, superhero movies don't do the Hans Zimmer-esque thing. X-Men movies have never sounded like Hans Zimmer, so that's weird. At the same time... there's only so many weird experimental blockbusters Hans Zimmer can do, because there's only so many made. Chris Nolan doesn't make a movie every year, so Hans Zimmer's got to fill in those gaps somewhere, I guess. And I guess X-Men Dark Phoenix is as good a project as any. I don't really get it.
I just hope his main goal in doing this was so he could just use the X-Men cartoon theme. And that's just the entire score. That's just playing for the entire movie.
Yeah, I'm super curious, if not excited, to see what this movie is, because it's the first one directed by Simon Kinberg, who has no past experience whatsoever as a director. He's just been producing and writing these movies, and, For all they're going to talk about, remember, he is the guy who wrote X-Men: The Last Stand. So, yeah, he's been involved with the series through the bad and the good.
Right.
So I don't know. It seems like he's maybe trying to take it in a different direction, but they're still following the pattern of the previous movies where they're jumping ahead another decade, which means that James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender have been playing these characters over 40 years of their lives with the next movie. So that's weird. Jennifer Lawrence is still in it, which I don't really get. Like, I guess they took a family member hostage. That's the only way I can imagine, because she doesn't seem like she cares about money that much. Who knows?
Maybe she's a really big Hans Zimmer fan. That was like, they got Hans Zimmer, and so it's like, you can get his autograph, you can hang out with him, like, it'll be great.
Yeah.
Jen, like, come on.
Yeah. And you don't have to wear any blue paint this time. We'll just make you CGI for those scenes.
Yeah, we will rewrite, like, the character so that she's never blue.
Yes. Anyway, I don't know. This movie's going to be weird.
Yeah, like, then obviously there's all just the weird stuff of that they already did this plot in the old... Like, this guy already wrote this plot one time.
Also, like, it's the Dark Phoenix saga, but they've also cast Jessica Chastain as the main villain, and I guess the main villain isn't Dark... I don't know what's going on with it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody does. I'm still not... I know that they have shot the movie. I'm still not convinced that it's real.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just so bizarre.
We also... This was not official, but we did get our first look at Brie Larson as Captain Marvel this week, because there was an on-set photo leaked, and it was cool. Someone pointed out it kind of looks like a Power Rangers costume, I think that's totally true, and Brie Larson's rocking it, and I'm excited to see Captain Marvel, so that's neat.
Yeah.
I think this was for Avengers 4. I don't think her movie has started shooting.
Yeah, that sounds right.
But yeah, because I think they're still shooting Infinity War 1 and 2, whatever they're going to be called. It's kind of weird. We only have the title for Infinity War. I wonder if they're going to wait and like there's some spoiler that is in the title for Part 2 that they're not revealing. But yeah.
Desolation of Thanos.
They're going to make it a trilogy.
An unexpected Spider-Man.
Anyway, it's just neat. There's a lot of, we're in an era of really colorful, wacky superhero costumes, and I really love it. And with every new colorful, wacky superhero costume we get, it makes the DCEU costumes look even stupider.
Yeah, it does feel like it'd be fun to chart like the history of superhero costumes on film, but like starting with them being in color. It's like it's like Christopher Reeve's Superman. It's like super bright and colorful, and then it's like slowly it's like like obviously Batman's going to be a little bit dull, but he still had the yellow thing on his chest, so there's still some color. Then eventually you start getting like X-Men is like, oh, everyone's just wearing black leather, and like Christopher Nolan Batman, this is like different shades of gray Batman. Like, okay, it's like Marvel movies, like, okay, getting some color. Okay, now it's like, and then now you see like the Captain Marvel pictures, like, holy shit, like I can barely look at you.
It's great.
It's great.
Speaking of Power Rangers, this wasn't on the outline, but there was a new trailer for Pacific Rim Uprising this week, and I watched it before the podcast, and I'm really looking forward to that movie. That looks like the Power Rangers movie we didn't get last year with that crappy remake.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited for Pacific Rim 2.
It's John Boyega getting to do his full British accent, which he has not gone to do in quite a while.
Isn't he basically playing the son of the Idris Elba character?
Yep.
Yeah. That's
Striker good. Pentecost.
Yeah, that's such good casting.
It's so great. I just wish they were, because in this story, Idris Elba's dead.
Yeah.
Or not Idris Elba, the character. And I wish they were on screen together. Maybe we'll get a flashback.
Yeah.
But I would love a buddy cop, father-son movie with Idris Elba and John Boyega. I'd watch the shit out of that. Anyway, you want to move on to our topic, Sean?
Let's talk about some video games, Jonathan.
All right. Let's start with Dragon Ball FighterZ. It's newer. It's fresher on our minds by a week because they're all coming out on top of each other. And there's really no spoiler component here, so we can get into Digimon at the end. Also, Dragon Ball, I don't know, I'm just going to guess, appeals to a wider audience than Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth Hacker's Memory.
Based on the sales figures, that would be true.
I mean, let's start here with Dragon Ball FighterZ. How wild is it to have... I mean, we kind of had this with Xenoverse 1, but not nearly to this scale. A new Dragon Ball game for a new generation that feels like a major, like, cultural event in gaming, where everybody's covering it, everybody's playing it, everybody's talking about it. I don't know if that's ever happened for Dragon Ball. Certainly if it has, not since, like, the PS2.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's easily the most attention a Dragon Ball game has ever had. Like, the Budokai games were fairly popular, and you got, like, a little bit, but, like, the thing was that it was only ever popular with people who gave a shit about Dragon Ball, and, like, it never had any sway outside of that. Like, I don't know if any Dragon Ball has ever really had any sway outside of people who like Dragon Ball.
I mean, it's worth remembering when those games started coming out, that was that brief period in American history when anime was everywhere for a couple of years.
The Toonami years.
Yes, the Toonami, when, like, Pokemon, the first movie, was #1 at the box office for a weekend. Like, we all forgot that happened, but that's still the highest grossing anime movie in America, is Pokemon, the first movie.
I mean, it's well deserved. It's a very touching, emotional film.
Indeed. Yeah, it's if you were thinking, like, is it Princess Mononoke? Is it Spirited Away? No, it's Pokemon, the first movie.
Of course it is.
That's how this works.
Yeah.
But yes, Digimon obviously was big back then, so, like, it had this, like, cultural cash, but that was also in anime, because of how they were dumbing them down on TV, was considered a little kids thing.
Yeah.
Now we're in this interesting era where, one, Dragon Ball is doing new stuff. Like, Dragon Ball, I guess, was kind of new over here in that they were still getting through parts of the dub they hadn't got to yet. But now, like, we fully have on a global scale, there's a new series airing, there have been 2 new movies, there's new manga, there's all this new stuff. So Dragon Ball has this big global presence, and all the people who were kids when it was on in the 90s are grown up, and now it's not just considered this little kids thing, it's a much wider cultural thing. And into that, we get Dragon Ball FighterZ, which is sort of the first game in many years that feels it was made really hyper competently.
Yeah, I mean, because it's on the one side, it's a fantastic game for, like, Dragon Ball fans, and that there's a lot of good fan service, like the storyboard has some good stuff. You know, the representation of the characters and the graphics and the sound design, like, all that stuff is so fucking fantastic, just, like, for a Dragon Ball fan. But then also, it's this awesome 3v3, like, Marvel vs. Capcom style fighter from Arc Systems Works, who's, like, one of the big names in fighting games with the Guilty Gear and BlazBlue and the Persona 4 Arena games. So, like, I played those, so I have some experience with their stuff. But it is a fantastic fighting game that, even if you have no background in Dragon Ball at all, you can come to this game, and if you liked Marvel vs. Capcom 2, you will like Dragon Ball FighterZ, like, because it is a lot of that stuff, and it is fucking awesome, and it looks amazing, and it plays fantastically.
This was kind of my thesis before the game came out, and I'm glad now that I've played some of it, I feel largely like this was the case. There's some nitpicks I have, and we'll talk about them in a second, that, like, to me, the best Dragon Ball games have almost always been handheld games, going back to the Game Boy Advance with, like, the Legacy of Goku games and Boo's Fury and Supersonic Warriors 1, and then probably my favorite Dragon Ball game before this was Supersonic Warriors 2 on the DS, which is also Arc System Works, from way back in the day, and then on the 3DS we've had things like Extreme Butoden and Dragon Ball Fusions, which is, if you've never played Dragon Ball Fusions, that game's a fucking trip, and there will probably be a Dragon Ball Fusions 2 at some point for Switch, so you can jump on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, like, they've always kind of taken the bigger risks with the handheld games and made more of what I consider games, not just, like, shells of fan service, you know?
Yeah.
Because I've played a lot of Dragon Ball games in my life.
Me too.
And I would only say some of them are genuinely good games, and generally those tend to be the handheld ones. Dragon Ball FighterZ feels like a game made with that handheld commitment to quality, that handheld sense of, like, branching out and really making a tight, real video game done for a console with a console budget and, like, you know, graphics and power and all of that stuff and online systems and all that for the first time in well over a decade for Dragon Ball. You know, and that is just a really cool thing to see. And I think you put that attention into it, you bring Dragon Ball back to where it is most comfortable, which is a 2D fighting game, and you polish the ever-living shit out of it, you're going to have something special.
Yeah, because you do also have, I think, this phenomena that we are getting a lot, which is, I think there are a lot of people who, like, really underestimate Dragon Ball as an IP and just how popular it is. Like, especially now, like, where you have, like, a multiple, like, generational approach. But it's like, you saw that when that Resurrection F movie came out over here in, like, a very limited release, and it broke, like, every record it possibly could in the type of release it had.
It's like the only movie in years that I genuinely had trouble getting tickets to. Mm-hmm. Like, I had to wait a week because every screening in the state of Colorado sold out.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
It's utterly insane. And then, you know, you have, like Super on Crunchyroll is easily the most popular series on Crunchyroll right now. Like, every time a new episode of Dragon Ball Super comes out on, like, Saturday night, the fucking Crunchyroll servers start to, like, get hit like a motherfucker, and that site is, like, down every other week because they keep on going over capacity because people go to that site to watch Dragon Ball Super right when it goes up. Yeah. It is an absurdly popular franchise, like, all over the world.
It's the most popular anime ever. Like,
yeah, easily.
Like, especially if you think globally, like, One Piece in Japan, there are probably conversations over there about what is more popular. But if you take Japan plus the world, there's no competition. It's Dragon Ball.
Yeah, it's far and away Dragon Ball. And then you, like, make, again, like, this incredible fucking fighting game on top of that and put all that stuff in there. that's how you get what is, like, by a wide margin, the most successful fighting game on Steam ever. You know,
I didn't know that stat. That's amazing.
Yeah, like, and the only reason, like, we know that for Steam is that you can see how many consecutive players there are, but I assume that must be true for most of the other platforms as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you want to talk about the game?
Let's talk about the game.
All right, you've talked about it a little bit in Sean's Beta Corner.
Yes.
Did it live up to your expectations now playing the full thing?
Yeah, it's very good. It is really hard to play this and Digimon at the same time.
It's they're such different games. They're so differently paced. Like, you know, I love Dragon Ball FighterZ. It's hard for me to sit down and play it for like hours on end, personally, just because it's like,
it's
it's a quick hit.
And it's intense, and you have to. This is like, okay, put that down. Let me go chill out with my Digimon for a second.
I have both games on disc, so I have to go fucking switch them out. That's never been a problem this generation because I'm not usually playing two games at once.
I decided to take the financial hit, and I got FighterZ digitally because it's just like, I know this is a game I'm going to come back to periodically. I might as well just get it digitally.
No, I understand. But yeah, so now that you have the access to the full game, I'm actually just curious about this. How are you playing it? Like, what are you playing? What are you liking? What are you not liking? Those sorts of things.
So, like, I've been kind of, like, the majority of my time has been in the story mode, but I bounce out of the story mode every once in a while, and I haven't done much online stuff yet. I've been playing some arcade mode. I'll occasionally just go into the versus mode and fight against some, like, computers and stuff like that. And then I also have had some time in the practice mode in what the fighting game people call the lab. And I try combo stuff because I'm, not great at fighting games. Like, the only fighting game, other than, I guess, like, I have two fighting games that I have a lot of time in. And that's Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and Soul Calibur 2. / Soul Calibur 1. I played both of those quite a bit. But yeah, so, like, obviously MVC2 is the comparison point here, but it's been a long time since, like, I played it a lot when I was pretty young at the arcade, or / the Domino's. It was an arcade machine at a Domino's, and then I played it a lot when it was on Xbox Live Arcade, but that's also been, like, 5 or 6 years, so I've been having to relearn everything, because I played the story modes for this Persona 4 Arena games, but I didn't play, like, the fighting stuff that much. And so one of the things I'm doing is I want to get through the story mode, and I think I'm probably like halfway through, because I think I'm about halfway through the second arc, because there are 3 arcs, and you can get through those pretty quickly. But the problem is, this is my main complaint with the game so far, is just that I really wish you could, when you started the story mode, hit a thing that just said, make it real, like have the AI actually fight me. Because
I agree.
The story mode has this very, very, like, slow ramp up, which is fine for someone who hasn't played a game like this before, and it did, like, it's basically a really long extended tutorial. But I wish that, like with every game, I feel like I talk about on this podcast, there should be difficulty modes available for everything in the game. Because obviously, if you're playing just, like, against the CPU outside of the story mode, you can toggle, like, I think there's, like, they have, like, 1 to 100 basically gradient in the CPU difficulty. Like, make some of that available in the story mode, because it's not until, like, the end of the first arc that the enemies really start kind of fighting back. And now that I'm getting, like, kind of through the second arc, because, the sort of the difficulty curve just keeps on going through those story arcs, now it feels like, okay, like, it's not challenging, but, like, the AI is fighting back, and every once in a while I have to be like, oh, I should switch this character out to another character so they don't get killed. Like, now I'm having more fun actually playing that bit. But the problem with it being so easy is, one, it's slightly dull in some places, but then also I feel like I'm developing really bad habits.
Yes, exactly.
Just like smashing these, like, dumb AI into the ground, and I have to back out every while against, like, I need to play something that's competent in this game. I don't want to go online right now, but I'll just play against, like, a decent AI and, like, in the arcade mode. Just to sort of be like, okay, this is how you play the game, so I'm not just, like, throwing out ultimates, like, from the other side of the screen just willy-nilly or something, because it's a stupid fucking thing to do in a game like this. But since the AI almost never blocks for most of the whole first arc, you can just smash them to pieces and they don't do anything.
Yeah, I was playing the story mode right before coming over here, and then I realized I had not played an online match because I had not been able to get into one yet. I have some complaints about a lot of the menu system in this game, but we'll get to that. So I backed out. I'm like, I should play some of the online before talking about this game on the podcast. So I got into a ranked match because I couldn't find a casual match. But I had been playing a lot of the story mode, backed out, went online, played with another person, got my ass handed to me because I'm like, right, blocking. They do that, and that's like that. I have no strategies for this.
It's like, oh no, they blocked.
Yes.
What do you do?
What do you do? And so the first time, I think I got one of his guys down to almost dead, but never killed one of the three. The second time, I did kill one of them and got another one down half, and just that little bit of improvement did feel really good, I have to say. But yes, you had. I was like, scrambling to like rework my strategies. But yes. My kind of general thesis on the game so far, outside of I'm saying too many theses, but I said about like the quality of the fighting stuff. My reaction to the game so far is that the fighting itself, like when you're playing with a character and you are on one of the stages and you're fighting in any format, even if it's just kind of boring and easy in the story mode, is still exceptional. I think the fighting basics when you are on the fighting screen, one-on-one with the three fighters on each side. That is an amazing, almost perfect experience. It is a deep, technical, complicated fighting system that is also remarkably fun and accessible.
Yeah.
And that is kind of a magic trick because this is way more technical than most Dragon Ball fighting games have ever been, but it also feels way more fun and like I'm getting it than I have before.
Yeah, it's a lot more accessible than most like serious fighting games, and that's awesome.
Yeah. But everything outside of the fighting itself, I'm a little lukewarm on. I hate the lobby thing that you have to go. I like the chibi people. I got Chibi Goldo right away, and I've got
a chibi Trunks with like a pink sweater, and he's got like he's not Super Saiyan Trunks, it's just normal Trunks, and he's got a pink sweater, and I love him.
No,
he's so good.
It's very cool, but what happened to menus? I miss menus. Why can't we just have a fucking menu like we did in every fucking game before this fucking generation where you could pick your fucking selection of what you want to fucking play? I'm sick of walking around in a stupid lobby that takes me 5 minutes to load into because like, is that one free? It says it's got 5 slots free. It's not? Okay, I'm going to change from Canada East time to Canada West time or something. I don't get all of that. It like really obfuscates what should be simple things. And then the story mode I'm really hit or miss on. Like, the cutscenes are kind of fun. And I do like the voice acting's great. I'm only listening in Japanese, but it's all the people. I definitely cheered up because the beginning of the game is Hiromi Suru as Bulma, and this is probably the last thing she did as Bulma, and she's one of the main voices here, and that's really cool. I do wish in story mode you could turn on auto advance so it just played like an anime.
Sure.
I wish I didn't have to click through every line.
I've heard that. I think it's because I've played some games like this that I didn't notice that, but I've heard that complaint a lot.
Because
online.
Those cutscenes are long. That's also a problem. I think there's some fun stuff, but it's such a fan servicey story. I don't think it can support the length of some of its own cutscenes, and maybe that changes. I'm only about halfway through the first arc.
Yeah, I think the first arc has some good stuff, some bad stuff. I find the second arc is much more interesting to me.
Okay,
I'm curious, and I suspect if this tracks the way that the Persona 4 Arena story did, I suspect the third arc will be the most interesting because the third arc is probably the one that focuses on the new character.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. We're also in a weird phase where, we went through that whole era in the PS2 and 360 generation where it was always Dragon Ball games were you start with Raditz and you end with Boo.
Yeah.
And we had
for a while there was a weird period where you start with Raditz and you end with Cell, even though even though in Japan the series had been over for over a decade. It's why do we know? It took 5 years since after 2000 to get to fucking Boo for some reason.
I forgot about that. But we did go through that period where it became a joke. It's always Raditz to Boo, and we've seen the story so many times. Now we've gone the other way, and we've done so many alternate what-if stories with Dragon Ball. This would feel more fresh to me if I hadn't seen Xenoverse, if I hadn't seen some of the handheld games where you have to reconfigure the characters in all these different scenarios. But it's still fun, it's fine. I agree with you on difficulty. That's one issue I also have with the story mode. But yeah, it does feel, and the online play as well, just feels, I really am often confused with what I'm getting into online. For me, it has taken forever to find any kind of match anywhere. And I know,
like I said, I haven't really tried online since the beta.
I know PlayStation had issues online this weekend. Maybe because of fighters, I don't know. So that might have been a part of it. I don't know. I wasn't that into it. it was just disappointing because I did buy PS Plus for the first time in a year and a half for this because I don't usually play any games online on PlayStation, and I finally just realized, no, I don't need whatever crappy Vita game they're giving me for free this month. So I finally bought it again, and then it was down for the weekend, which was kind of funny.
Yeah.
They welcomed me back with closed arms. Anyway, so yeah, I really love everything in the fighting, and it is so exceptional. The other stuff doesn't bother me that much. I miss menus. I really do.
I'm kind of two minds about it because there's a little bit of a compromise that if you hold down either L2 or R2, I forget
L2.
which one. Yeah, like you can bring up that sort of like menu. It's still not as fast as like a old video game menu would have been. So it's like, and I do think like I would have preferred a more normal menu, but like I'm curious to see how like what the game is like once the online stuff has settled down, because obviously like it's a fucking like rush to this like this has got to be by far the most successful game Arc Systems Works has ever done. So like I think it was good on the one hand that like they did the beta, because that beta like crashed and burned on the first day it was open, and you can like, and I'm actually really impressed that. Because I had it digitally, so like I played that game as soon as it opened up digitally, and the online has never been completely down. Like it has had some issues, and it's obviously heavily populated, but it's never just like crashed completely. And I was basically expecting it to just crash completely. And so I'm curious to see if that like lobby stuff gets a little bit easier to deal with once like the servers are not being attacked from all ends.
I don't even want to deal with it. Like, if it were completely automatic and it just sent you into something, even if you had to wait a little bit, I would mind it much less.
Well, I think that's what it will be like once the online is, because that has happened to me a couple of times where I just turn on the game and I just end up in the last lobby I selected automatically. Yeah. But the problem is, since there are so many people playing the game, the lobby ends up filling up and then it'll kick you out. And it, like, I think they should have put in something that just like pick the next most similar lobby to the last one I picked and like just deal with it.
You know, I didn't even really know this was part of the game, and it was surprising to me. You know, I pick up a Dragon Ball fighting game, I think there's going to be a menu with like story mode, free battle, online, something like that, and instead it's you go into a multiplayer like Destiny style lobby. There are some little charms to it, but it's a bizarre choice for me. Like, I don't know, that would be like if Super Mario Odyssey started you with a fucking lobby before you could go pick your thing to play. It's weird. Like, why does this game have that?
Well, because I think you can, like, the idea is that when you are in that lobby, you can just challenge the other people in the lobby to fights that way, so it's another way to play the online, is not just dump into random matchmaking, but, like, you know, try to foster a, like, community or something using the lobby system. I think that's the idea.
But that could even be its own mode or something. Like, I don't know why it has to be the menu from which you play things. Now, luckily it is, like, bifurcated enough that, like, if you're in story mode and go into rest mode on your PS4, it won't kick you out.
Yeah, once you access any mode that doesn't need you to be connected online, it doesn't give a shit, and it's like you're in story mode land.
And that's a godsend. Like, it could have easily been the other way where you're always online, and they didn't do that, thank God.
You can also go to an offline lobby if you need to.
That's
I think you have to hit, like, triangle or something, but
like
that was something I didn't realize immediately, because it's not, like, that button prompt is not very obvious, but you can go to an offline lobby.
It's just a weird... Like, again, this is not something that, like, would probably... If I were given, like, a letter grade to this game or something, or a star grade, this wouldn't affect it that much, because it's not the meat and potatoes of the game, but it is worth noting. It just has always annoyed me a little bit when I've had to interact with it. That said, this is a magical game.
Yeah.
So I picked up the game, or I got it on Friday, and I wasn't able to play it during the day. So I got home at like 8 o'clock at night or something, and I put in the disc, and I started to play through the 40,000 tutorials they had. Like, I did one or two, and then I was like, my brother walked in, and he said, "Oh, you got Dragon Ball FighterZ?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you want to play?" And so I backed out of the tutorial and said, "Here's how the best way to learn a fighting game is to get a friend on the couch and play the fucking fighting game."
Yeah.
So we went over to the local lobby, picked our characters, and for like an hour, we just, like we were when we were kids with the Budokai games or something, or in the 360 days, I think the one we played was Raging Blast 2. Like, we've always had one on hand, because Dragon Ball is one of those, we like to play these kind of games together. Like, this couch, competitive stuff is really fun. And I knew it worked as soon as we just started playing, and we went a couple rounds back and forth, and I would win, and then he would win, and it was just this back and forth, and it was so much fun. Like, we went through, I think we each tried pretty much every character and all the different combinations, and we would make stupid teams. Like, my first team I think I made was like Krillin, Yamcha, and Tenshin Han.
There you go.
I just went like the B team.
The A-team, damn it!
No,
the A-team,
in my heart, they're the A-team.
Yamcha's so good in this game.
They are! Krillin and Yamcha might be my two favorites that I've played so far, but we'll get to that. Yeah. Anyway, and I fell in love with this game playing it like that, because that's how you want to start. Like, if you pick up this game and it seems too daunting, because I do think, like, with the lobby system and with the amount of options and with the sheer amount of tutorials there are at your disposal if you want them, I think fighters can seem a little big at first. what you want to do is just start playing it. Like, skip the tutorials, go back into that if you're interested, but if you're going to play story mode, you will get all of that.
That is something, like, I guess I didn't really need to know that because I'd already played the tutorial, because that tutorial thing was one of the, like, the other thing that was available in the beta, so it's like I didn't need to do that, but it's like, that is something people should know. That tutorial stuff is already in the story mode, and do not do that separately unless you have no interest in the story mode at all.
Right. So, you don't need to do that. Like, just start playing the game, you will pick up on it. It's fun to just get into it, because that's how this sort of thing works. You want to learn in the heat of battle.
Yeah.
For a lot of it. Like, sometimes you want to back out and, like, let's figure out how to do this quarter circle thing.
Yeah.
But yes. No, and I just had so much fun with that, and then started the story mode, and just, whenever I am in one of the fighting, I have fun with this game, and I am wowed by it, because this is easily the best graphical representation Dragon Ball has ever had.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's one of the best looking games that's out there right now, just in terms of, like, the ability to, like, simultaneously replicate what, like, Dragon Ball looks like, but then also have it be 3D at the same time is the most insane magic trick. I watched, like, an hour-long video they did on the technique they used for this in Guilty Gear Xrd, which is the game that, like, they pioneered this, like, graphic style on. And even after watching an hour-long GDC presentation they did, I still don't know how it is done, and I assume it was just magic. Like, that's just what they did.
It really does. Like, when you get into it, it feels like you are just watching an episode of the anime, but you're playing it.
Yeah.
Like, you are controlling a fight that is, to be frank, more flashy and incredible than any fight in the original anime.
Yeah.
Because they weren't able to animate it like this. You know? And just the attention to detail on everything. Like, I think the moment I truly fell in love with this was whenever I made my stupid team of Krillin, Yamcha, and Tenshinhan. And with Krillin, the way they do his key attacks, and that he does out of both hands, and he does them curved, and you can do the thing where he jumps and blasting the ground.
His down key attack is so good.
And you can control them, and, like, his super does that. And it's like, yes, they get this. Because that's the kind of attention to detail you don't get in most other Dragon Ball games.
Yeah, no, and it's like... It's the thing that's, like, really impressive about this game to me is that for most Dragon Ball games, I feel like it has always been a dichotomy between, like, how fan servicey it is and how good of a video game it is. So it's like, you know, something like Xenoverse it's absurdly fan servicey and, like, is awesome for the fan service. It's like every fucking character you could ever imagine. It was also like the Budokai Tenkaichi games versus the Budokai games were always like this to me also. That's like the Budokai played better. The Budokai Tenkaichi, those games in the PS2 era, it's like every fucking character you could possibly imagine was in those games, and they had, like, a bunch of moves, and they had, like, one of them had, like, 500 costumes. It's like, you could play the story mode, and the story mode went through literally, like, every time someone glared menacingly at another character, a fucking fight happens in the story mode in those games. Like, it was the most, like, painstakingly detailed fan service game imaginable.
I know for a while, Budokai Tenkaichi 3 had the Guinness Book of World Records for most fighters in a game or something.
It was probably like several hundred. Like,
yes, it was.
It gets ridiculous. And so, but the thing that's really impressive about Dragon Ball FighterZ is, like, obviously, because of how, like, detailed the fighting is and all that kind of stuff, you do not have, like, 100 character roster. I think there's, like, 21 characters or something like that. Which is a decent-sized roster, but it's not, you know, it's not, like, blowing down the doors in terms of, like, representation of all the characters. But when they do have a character in there, the thoroughness with which it's represented, in the attention to detail of stuff like Nappa in this game has an overhead attack that is just like a normal, like, overhead attack. But if you hold down the button, he stops midair in this awkward pose, and that's when you realize that, oh, that's... Like, they took the panel from the manga, or, like, the frame from the anime of when Nappa's about to smash, like, Krillin and everybody, and then Vegeta tells him to stop and, like, wait for Goku to get there, and Nappa freezes in midair. It is that. Like, they just did that frame. It's like, it's that all over the game. Every character has those.
The other one that, like, was so impressive to me that they pulled this off was with Trunks. If you do, I think it's his, like, medium level combo with the sword. If you get through it, he'll do the thing where he slices and then puts the other hand under and does the energy attack, which is from the scene in the anime where he does that to Frieza. And I was like, oh my god, because that's one of the most impressive pieces of animation in the history of Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
And they pull it off so fluidly. And the other thing is they pull off all those things without ever slowing down the pace of the fight.
Exactly. Like, it's so perfectly integrated into the fight that, like, it's easy sometimes to miss that it's like, holy shit, like, that is, like frame specific, like, 100%, like, how that character, like how like Krillin does his Kamehameha in the air, and the way his legs are positioned and everything's like, that is perfect. It is easy to miss that sometimes, but all of it is there.
It's one of the most impressive things to me, because in past Dragon Ball games, when they would do the really cool, like, now they're going to do their cool move from the anime, it would often go into, like, just a big flash animation kind of thing.
And it would be like, you would sit there for like a minute and watch Goku throw his spirit bomb and all that shit,
But the most egregious was in Budokai 3, which is a great game with this one glaring flaw, where those super moves are like, you have to do this series of button presses as it's happening, and I never, in years of playing that game, figured out what the fuck you were supposed to do there.
It's just a coin flip. I hate that mechanic.
And it slows down the fight, and it's just horrible. Dragon Ball FighterZ has none of that. Like, it is, as you say, it has this perfect sweet spot between amazing, amazing fan service, and it is also a meaty, incredible, accomplished fighting game. And that intersection, just like for any franchise, let alone Dragon Ball, is amazing to hit.
Yeah. Some other ones I'm thinking is Frieza maybe has some of the best. Like one of the great ones for Frieza is quarter circle back and X, which is like your key blast button. Is he does the like death saucer attack or whatever, which goes at the enemy, and then it comes back at you, and so you can 100% get hit by that attack, which is obviously that is how Frieza like does that to himself in the anime. That's basically how he's defeated. But like one of the things that's really I love doing with that with Frieza is doing that attack, and then it hits the enemy, and then it's coming back, and then Frieza has like every character has that like vanishing attack you can do that, and you can spend one key bar on it. But Frieza has a specific move, which is down X, which is a like teleport near the enemy and hit them with a key blast attack, and like dodging the discs with that feels so fucking cool. And it's not even like complicated, because again, I am not that good of a fighting game player, but it's like you can do little things and that like feel impressive to you. That's like, fucking, that was so fucking cool. That's like I dodged that thing. Like if Frieza had done that, Goku's ass would be fucking toast. Because like Goku lucked the fuck out in that fight.
It's actually, it gets to a point where when you've played with enough characters, and then you go to a character you haven't played with as much, but you know from the manga, from the anime, you'll be like, how do I do this move? Because you just know it's in there.
Yeah.
Like I think that's when I got to Yamcha, I'm like, how do I do Fist of the Wolf Fang?
Yeah.
How am I going to do that? Oh, you do it in different ways, and it's fucking cool. But like you're constantly like, figuring out like, oh, I bet, like it took me a while to start learning how to do the quarter circle stuff, but Krillin's like quarter circle X, like 3-bar move is, I'm like, I bet I know what this is. I executed it, and he does the energy blast that goes up and pushes the person into the air, and he flies and hits him like, yep, that's what Krillin's move would be.
Yeah, but for me, the 100% best one of these is, and because it was in the storybooks, it was like, I didn't do it against another human player, but it still felt very good, is Frieza, when Frieza turns, like Frieza has two ultimates, like he has like a normal one that's like he does that dive bomb attack where he like buffs out to 100%. The other one, if you do RT, is Golden Frieza from the movies.
I didn't know that's in there.
Yeah, so he can turn into Golden Frieza. Which like makes him slightly more powerful and blah blah blah, like what you'd expect that sort of transformation to do in a fighting game like this. The best thing is though that eventually, if you don't win while Golden Frieza is activated, it will run out and Frieza will collapse to the ground for a second. And then they put in a move that you can do that when you have like Golden Frieza's run out and you've collapsed to the ground. If you have at least one key bar, you can spend one key bar. And if you press X and the guy from Resurrection F shoots a gun that goes over Frieza's head and can hit the enemy, and I killed someone with it in story mode. Like I orchestrated the entire fight specifically to try to kill someone with that when I realized that that's what that move was in the move list. As like, I need to have this work. It is so good. It's such a, like, I so desperately want that to be the way someone wins at a big fighting game tournament like EVO. Is the stupid fucking move that just goes across, this little laser goes across the screen to fucking hit someone.
It really is amazing after, I've been watching or reading Dragon Ball most of my life. You have too. I've been playing Dragon Ball video games since I started playing video games. It is amazing to be playing a game like this and still be actively surprised by the amount of stuff that is in here from the show, and again, without slowing down the gameplay.
Yeah.
It really is an amazing thing. Like, it feels like half of the workload for Arc System Works in this would be obsessively watching every episode of the show over and over for, like, what are we going to do now?
Yeah.
You know?
It's just like, the attention to just like every little bit of animation is so incredible.
Yeah, the character roster is great. It also has that quality that I like in a fighting game where characters feel different and differentiated, and there's like different strategies you might use with them. And yet, it's not like the game changes wholesale depending on who you're playing. It still feels very much like the basics are the basics, the buttons are the buttons. And, when you get to know a certain fighter better, you're going to get better at it. But you don't feel the need to, like, get good at just one person. Your skills will carry over throughout all the fighters. And I think that's a tough balance to hit, that they've hit very well.
Yeah, because that's one of the things with, like, I know from, like, hearing about it for Guilty Gear and stuff like that, but I know from experience of having played Persona 4 Arena that Arc Sys typically has like differentiates the characters really heavily in such a way that like there's something that is cool about that. And obviously I think if you're like a really serious fighting game player, that you probably love that shit because it's like, it's something like, every character in Persona 4 Arena has like 2 meters that are like specific to them. That's like, okay, I need to keep track of like this like gun meter and this thing over here, and they interact in this way. And it's like really mechanics heavy. But I tend to I think it's one of the reasons why I like Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is that sense of like, okay, whoever I'm playing as, if I this is how I do like a like launcher into the air. This is how I do like an overhead attack. This is like, like half of the characters, if you do quarter circle forward X, it's like a Kamehameha type move. If it's not just the Kamehameha, like that kind of stuff is very similar. But then you do have characters that like Captain Ginyu, who's like, it's insane because all of his key blast attacks are not key blast attacks. They call in different menus of the Ginyu Force on like a wheel that's like you go through them in order, which I love. You go through like Guldo, Raccoon, Birder, and then Jace, and like you always go through them in that order with his X attacks. Like Nappa plants Cybermen. The Hit is a counter character. Like a lot of the Android 16 is a big grappler. A lot of them do have like really distinct features, but they are far more approachable than in a lot of other fighting games I've played.
It does feel, and we'll have to see how this bears out, it does feel like they've hit a balance, though, where I think like hardcore fighting game people are going to love this.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a big feature at tournaments, in part because it'll have that support of pros, but it's also going to be flashy enough to get people wanting to watch it.
Yeah, because it's I think it's the same thing that, the fighting game community has been talking about, because ever since this game has been on my radar, I've been like slowly sort of okay, I'll watch like this YouTuber I've heard is good with fighting games, so I've been kind of doing some of that stuff, and it seems like a lot of like the buzz I've been hearing is that like, and I think even Waypoint had an article like a week ago about this, of like they're like the fighting game community recognizes that this game is a incredible like entry point into the fighting game community that is typically so insular, like in video games, like there's not much like it. Other than like MOBAs, but then even the like MOBAs are so huge and popular that even though they're inaccessible, they have millions of people that watch those things. Like fighting games is a bit more insular and tight knit, and Dragon Ball FighterZ does feel like this way for like us. Like definitely like what I intend to try to do is like learn how to play a fighting game, and like this is my window into like I want to have access to that shit. I do not like the fact that when a big new fighting game comes out, I'd look at it like, that looks interesting, but I feel like I can't play it because I'm not good enough at fighting games. Like, I hate that feeling, and I suspect there are a lot of people that have play video games their whole lives that feel that way in Dragon Ball FighterZ, because it turns out a lot of people who like video games also really like Dragon Ball. That's like, it's just such a perfect vector into that community.
It feels like a moment for the fighting game community, like a Smash Bros. Sort of thing.
Exactly.
It's a big opportunity in that same way, and that I think this will probably be a staple for many years to come.
I hope so, because I really want to see what like pro level players can do with some of the shit in this game, because it looks fucking whack.
Yeah, I mean, let's get back to that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the character roster more in a second, but the stages, the graphics, the colors, the fighting animations, the blasts, the attention to detail on all of that, it's just absolutely gorgeous. Like, it's some of the best animation Dragon Ball as a franchise has ever received.
Yeah.
Period. The stages themselves, like the roster of stages, aren't the most like creative set of stages in the sense of like which ones they picked. It's mostly Dragon Ball 101.
Yes, if you want to fight in the rocky wasteland where Goku fights Vegeta, you can fight there. Like one of the things I do like is that it's like something that's true across this whole game is that I feel like Dragon Ball Super is such a breath of fresh air because it's been so tight knit of like the what you can have in a Dragon Ball game for so long that like I get like weirdly excited when it's like, oh, there's like the space stage and the cavern stage from the Gods movie. Like, awesome.
Yes, no, I like that too.
There's some new places to fight. It's not the islands where Vegeta fights Cell. It's not the rocky plains. It's not the Kai planet. It's not the hyperbolic time chamber. It's like, it's fucking the cave. Great.
Yeah. And they've still got, the Tenkaichi Budokai stage and the Room of Spirit and Time and all those things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the little new ones. But all of those stages are executed so well. They look so good, particularly like the destroyed version of like the city or of Namek. I really do like the space one as well, because that's one of my favorite scenes in Battle of Gods is in space, and that's great. The cavern, I would not have expected the 30 seconds from the cavern to become a stage, but it's great.
Yeah.
And definitely a foundation on which they can do more cool stuff in DLC, because this is a game I am very excited for DLC on.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, I'm saying that. But yes, it's awesome. Yeah, so the stages look great, and the animations, you mentioned this in the beta, of like little things like when the fighters come in and they just collide, and the dust goes everywhere, and then it settles right before you start. There are so many little things like that. Like when you fire enough key blasts, and it really does the thing from the show, where like this insane, like, flashes going on, and just rubble going everywhere, and then it settles down.
I love that that's what, like, Vegeta has in lieu of a Kamehameha. Like, they didn't give him the Gallic gun, they gave him just shoots like 100 key blasts, because I feel like, particularly in the Namek stuff, he just does that against everybody. Like, this is one go-to move, is like, just shoot a shit ton of blasts.
Because he does the Gallic gun, or whatever it's called, once.
Yeah.
He does the a million times.
Yeah.
That's what Vegeta does. He goes ape shit,
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just little things like with some of the character animations, Android 16 firing his fists off, or Trunks using the sword with the heavy attack, and like he always like sheathes it and unsheathes it. Like that animation exists. It's incredible. There's just so many amazing things, and again, like the color and vibrancy and fluidity of it is really a technological achievement.
Yeah. And going back to those stages for a second, like, one of the things that's really remarkable about it to me is that attention to detail of, like, this, like, pieces of the stage will get destroyed as you fight, and, like, if you go up into the air and, like, you've, like, done this big launcher and you smash the enemy down to the ground and they make this big impact and there's, like, this little, like, crater of rubble there, like, that stays there. And then, like, I've even seen that if you could, like, deflect key blasts, like, that key blast will fly into the background of the stage and blow something in the background. Like, or one of my favorite things is they have all these, like, great stage transitions if you, like, knock them out with, like, a heavy attack and shit like that. And I love if you, like, I've in some of the stages, like, if you defeat one of the enemies with a heavy attack, they go flying off the stage into another stage, and I love when they go flying into the, like, ruined West City stage, and then, like, the fight moves there, is that it's, like, fucking, like, Trunks is buried in the rubble back there somewhere. Like, I just knocked his ass out. He went flying back there, and he's under that building somewhere. Or like, on the Namek, the destroyed Namek stage, if you do that, they just go flying into a fucking volcano and blow up the fucking volcano. It's so good.
I also love the support animations when you can just tap L1 and bring someone in rather than switching, because it's always a little character-specific thing that is very funny. And when you get used to it, it's like, right, this one will probably be short range because it's that character versus... Yeah.
Or Krillin will pop up and throw a fucking Senzu bean at you, which is good. That's one of his moves.
So
it's very good.
It's very good. Yeah, I think for a Dragon Ball fighting game... Because there are other types of Dragon Ball games, and I actually wish they broke out of the fighting game rubric more often with Dragon Ball, because it's an obvious, mix, but it's not necessarily the only mix you can do with Dragon Ball. Like Legacy of Goku 2 on the GBA is a great, basically, like, RPG sort of thing that is
like a
wonderful.
top-down action RPG,
but for a fighting game, I've never felt so much like I'm just playing the show. As I do 100%. Here. It is so immersive and so addictive, and... it's really fun, even in story mode, when it's kind of lower level and you're just goofing around. But when it gets intense, it's really amazing. Because even, like, when I played that online match today, I started getting my ass kicked. I rolled my eyes and I'm like, I'm going to hate this, aren't I? By the end of that match, I was so, like, knuckles, like, wrapped around the controller, so into it. Because it works out your brain, your hands, everything, and it's flashy as fuck.
Yeah. And there is something, I think I kind of talked about this on the beta a little bit, there's something about the way they specifically handled that 3v3 model that I love, of how compartmentalized it is, of that, like, I think this is what I said when we talked about the beta, of, like, even if I'm getting my ass handed to me, like, I can still have, like, this, like, smaller objective of, like, if I take out one of your guys, that feels way more significant to me than, like, if it was just like one giant health bar and I got it down to half or something. The fact that I like knocked out Goku and then the fight has to sort of start over and you go back to that neutral position. I think that's so smart because that's one of the changes that they made from the typical versus formula like Marvel vs. Capcom is that if you knock a guy out, the next person just jumps right in. And I think it's really smart that the fight basically resets psychologically. And then also in terms of mechanics, you have this like new opportunity to sort of like take a breath and be like, okay, like I fucked up and I lost like my adult Gohan and I did almost no damage to him, but like maybe now with Goku, like I can figure something out and like you get like that brief moment of respite. I think that's such a smart bit of design.
I agree with all of that. You saying adult Gohan reminded me of something that there's a nitpick I have had since Budokai 1 on the PS2, and no one ever talks about it, I feel like.
Okay, yeah.
Teen Gohan, adult Gohan. That's such a misnomer. He's 9 years old as Teen Gohan, and he's 16 as adult Gohan.
I think he's 12 as Cell Gohan, right?
Is he that old?
He's either 11 or 12.
No, he's 9 because he's 16 in the Boo arc, and it's 7 years later. Okay, there's a 7-year jump between Cell really and the Great Saiyaman. Yeah,
maybe that might be something they said in the dub. Or something.
In the dub, he's aged up because he at the beginning of like the Raditz arc, he's 4 in the manga, and even he puts up the fingers, but in the dub they give a different age. So yeah.
But although I will say that with. Technically, though, Adult Gohan in this is Adult Gohan because presumably he's Gohan from Dragon Ball Super, so he has a family.
I guess so.
So he has a wife, he has a daughter, he's working at a university. He has responsibility.
It looks to me like it's Gohan from the Boo arc, but that's okay.
I think he is because they have. If you have watched Dragon Ball Super, they've come back around on that character in such a way that I think it is supposed to be basically Dragon Ball Super.
Because from what I've seen of Dragon Ball Super, adult Gohan to me would be Gohan in like a green shirt and glasses. And he would have the Muzukashi Hon, the difficult look, and he would just beat people with it. And that's it. He'd have an apron on. That would pretty much be it.
I think Gohan has come back to a place where he realized that he needs to be strong in order to protect his family, and so he started training again.
I dipped my toes in the other night to trying to get back into Dragon Ball Super, and I saw the episode where Mr. Satan has to fight an alien from space, and I did laugh very hard at that one. Because, they made a Mr. Satan episode. It's not necessarily great, but it's for me, because that's my favorite character. Yeah. And they did not have Mr. Satan in a jetpack in Dragon Ball FighterZ.
Yeah, so. It's something of... Because I've heard a lot of people being like, they need to put Mr. Satan, they need to put Videl in this game, and it's like, I get where you're coming from. I do not know how they would function in this game.
Videl, absolutely, I think they should, because...
I would like to have Videl there, but there's something about the mechanics that I just can't quite see it with her. I think it'd be hard to do.
Harder, but I think they could... If you can make it work for Yamcha, I think you could make it work for Videl. The other thing, though, if they were to do Mr. Satan, here's what I want for DLC. In that episode, Mr. Satan has a dream sequence where he sees himself going Super Saiyan.
Yes,
that's what they should do. They should just have Super Saiyan Satan and just make it goofy, and it's him with yellow hair. That would be very funny.
Yes, at the very least, make that a lobby avatar. As far as I know, that might actually be a lobby avatar. Yes. There are a lot of those things.
Okay, I had a question about controls and executing on these.
Okay.
How are you doing with the quarter circle turns?
Fine. Yeah. That's basically how Marvel and that's like a Street Fighter kind of thing. So I like that's nice because the thing I always had a hard time with when I played old fighting games, when I played fighting games when I was younger, is actually what I mean, is like the Shoryuken thing from Street Fighter where it's like forward, down, forward. Like that movement has always been a bitch, I think, on anything that's not a proper fighting stick. I like that this... if you have not played this kind of fighting game, it takes a while to get used to the quarter circle stuff, but that's such a nice sort of basic input that once you get used to it, I can do it without thinking about it because I played these kinds of games before.
Okay.
It's I really love that they did not do a bunch of really complicated half circle forward, half circle back, quarter circle forward again, heavy kick, light kick. Some of the input stuff on older fighting games is so fucking obtuse and I can't deal with it. Everything being either down X or quarter circle forward or quarter circle back. I think I like that.
Yeah, it's a little new to me because I've played that kind of thing before but never gotten good at it. I have been surprised by how accessible I find it in general. I'm definitely getting to a point where I can pull it off more reliably. It's not second nature yet, but I think I'll get there. The one thing, and I just wondered if you had this experience, And with every other character, I can do like the Kamehameha easily at this point. For some reason, with Super Saiyan Goku, like the main Goku one, I do the same thing, and they won't happen. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I play as him more, and I have more chances to fuck up because he's the main character in story mode.
Probably that's what
I don't know, but I just constantly like I'll do the X. It's like, oh shit. This is X, shit, X, and I'll try it on the D-pad, and then he may do it, but he'll do it in the air for some reason. So
I think the one thing that has happened to me a little bit, this is more probably was just because I was doing it, I was playing as him a lot in the beta, was adult Gohan or older teen Gohan or however you want to like refer to.
He's
Gohan,
just he's a teenager.
He has a family. He's
okay.
Adult. He's a working man. Okay?
I'm okay with that.
He's bringing the bread home. God damn it.
Yeah. Post-pubescent Gohan.
Yes. But I, for whatever reason, I had a hard time pulling out his Masenko, which is the same thing as the Kamehameha. But that led me to discovering what I think is like a cool little tiny combo you can do with that character, which is his down key blast is he jumps backwards at an angle and shoots a key blast right where he was standing, and you can do that to like hit stun them for a second, and then you can pull off the Masenko. That's fun to do.
Nice.
But yeah, I think like it is, especially because for me, what the trickiest part was getting used to doing it on a PlayStation controller, which is something I hadn't never really played a fighting game on the DualShock before. So that's where like a little bit of it came from, because I'm more used to playing it with like an arcade stick or something. But I do think overall they did a good job at like adapting the controls to the controller, and I think like I would actually kind of prefer using the DualShock versus buying an arcade stick or something like that, because of how the ways that like assists and like the homing dash and all that stuff is mapped to the shoulder buttons works really well.
No, it feels very good, and I was just kind of curious about your thoughts on it, because, you know, I don't want to say like there's no learning curve to this game. There is, and certainly like there is like a bottomless pit of depth to the fighting system, I think, especially when you see the mountain of tutorials in the story mode, the never-ending mountain of tutorial and things you can do, and just like, oh, I didn't know you could do that, and those are all kind of cool. But you also like, you can't force yourself to memorize all those things.
Yeah.
It's going to come. But I think the game also gives you room in the controls, in the flow of battle, to learn as you go. It doesn't feel so demanding that like you have to master it all at once.
Yeah, like I have basically decided for like the immediate future to ignore like team composition and assists, and I'm like not thinking about like pulling in a carrot like an assist in the middle to like extend a combo or something like that. This is like, that's too much. That's like, I'm gonna be Goku, I'm gonna fight as Goku, and then if my Goku's getting beat up, maybe I'll switch out someone else and then let him recharge his health in like the back or something. But I'm not like, you know, it's that thing of with fighting games that I have this problem with like trying to overthink things because I want to get good at it, and it's sometimes you have to decide, I'm just not going to bother with that mechanic. Like, I'm just not going to think about using the vanishing attack, because like it's too much to hold on to. I'm going to like focus on everything except for that one mechanic for this fight. And I think I think that's like the only way to like make sense of it at some point.
Yeah. See, my problem is actually I use the vanishing, like the triangle circle thing. Yeah. I spam that too much.
Yeah.
Although it's just very
just
fun.
Spend all your meter.
But my brother and I, we were playing this the other day. We got into a fucking great match where we figured out that there's a thing you can do where if someone vanishes and then you press it right away, you will vanish too, and then come behind them and kick them. But you can keep it going, and like it became the craziest fucking thing, and it really did look like one of those scenes from the show where like the humans are on the ground looking up, and like their eyes are darting back and forth, and you just see up there like these little like dashes in the animation as they hit each other in the air.
It's like you have like Krillin looking around, it's like, what's happening? And then like he's just like a close up on Piccolo's eyes as his pupils dart around. Yeah. Yes. No. It's good. It's a very good game.
Yes. Very excited. I'm interested to see what they add with DLC, because I like the fighting roster. I wish it had just a little more outside the box here and there.
They've said that there's going to be 8 DLC characters, which there have been. I don't know if you want me to talk about this at all, but like I have seen, because this game came out on PC, people have already like data mined.
Yeah, I was actually just looking at the list
to see what like none of it is official, because Ark has not talked at all about what the game, what the DLC characters are. But people are pretty confident at least 6 of them.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
Not really yet, because maybe listeners don't want to hear it. But they sound, a couple of them I wish it was a little more out of the box. Like, okay, one of them's Broly. I don't necessarily need Broly again, but whatever.
I'm not a fan of Broly as a character, but I think the game does need more like big grappler type characters, because it kind of only has Nappa and 16.
I will also say in Arc System Works Supersonic Warriors 2, Broly in that game is fucking awesome because they use his mass very well. So that's
where like I'm not excited about Broly as from a character point of view, from like a narrative point of view, I guess, but like from a like fighting game point of view, that seems like
that's what he was made for.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, he does seem like he was made in a fighting game first and put in the movie later. Somehow that's not how it worked out.
Yes. Anyway, you want to go on and talk about a different game for now?
Well, before we move on, because we didn't talk that much about the story mode stuff, because I think there's a little bit more to talk about there. And that, because like how far are you in it?
I'm not super deep. I'm on like I'm like I think 30-something% through the first arc. They have the little counter. Yeah. Maybe more than that now, probably. But yeah,
because the story mode is interesting in that like I think like that first story arc has definitely like a lot of like lulls, of whereas like there's kind of like nothing happening in the main plot, and that's kind of dull. The one thing I do really like is they have this thing where you can trigger those conversations between characters, like before fights, if the like configuration is right. So it's like if you have like Goku and Vegeta.
I do like that stuff.
Yeah, like a lot of that stuff is really well written, and like that's where a lot of like the good, because it's like some of it is funny, but a lot of it is also like surprisingly like actually plot moving and like character developing. It's like it's more than just fan service. And obviously, if you don't know much about Dragon Ball, the story mode is going to be utter fucking nonsense to you. But if you're a fan of Dragon Ball, and particularly if you've been watching Super, I think there are parts of the game that have like the same sort of tone and the right perspective on the characters that kind of feels like this is like some weird like abbreviated long lost arc from Dragon Ball Super or something. And although I do wish, even though I have no idea how you could possibly narratively justify it, I do wish that some of the super characters that are in the game popped up in the story mode a bit more. Because Beerus and Whis show up at the very beginning, but past that, nobody really has showed up.
That's true. That's too bad, because you can always drop Beerus and Whis in there.
I mean, they do come back one at a time, but like you're not really playing as them, which makes sense. Because like I don't, you can't like Whis is not playable in the game, but like Beerus is a fighter and he's an awesome character to play as. But it's like I really want to be able to play as him in the story mode, and characters like Goku Black, I have no idea how you justify Goku Black being in the game from a story point of view, or Hit. This like because that like the context, the narrative context in that in Super, it would be insane to try to justify that. But like that's some stuff that I wish that they could have found a way to inject that stuff a little bit more like completely.
Can you believe Beerus and Whis were only introduced 5 years ago?
Yeah.
They feel like they have always been there. They're two of, I think, Toriyama's greatest character creations.
I agree.
And it's, I think, more than anything, they've kind of been part of the animating force that's made Dragon Ball a thing again. But yeah, no, getting back on topic. Yeah, I enjoy the story mode so far, but I am definitely happy to hear from you that it gets better.
Yeah.
Because as it stands right now, if I didn't hear that, I might abandon it and go play arcade mode or something.
Yeah, like the thing I would say is like don't do a bunch of optional fights.
Okay,
like,
just
like
through it.
Just go through like unlock all the characters. And I would also say like for that first arc, I started having a lot more fun with it when I went with it with the mindset of like I'm just going to like try all the characters and like try to and just like act like it's a training mode instead of anything else, and like don't take the fight seriously. But I guess I'll just, because it's like it's not a big spoiler. Like arc 2 focuses on the villain characters, and so that's where I think it starts getting more interesting. Because then also my two favorite performances in the game are Frieza and Cell.
Well, of course,
and fucking because Frieza is more like because Frieza's like been around in Super, but it's like it's been a while since I've heard Wakamoto as Cell, and fucking that dude has never undersold a performance in his life. Every time he just goes at it with 110%. It's so good.
Yeah, Wakamoto is one of the people you can hear the age and that he mumbles Cell a lot more than he used to, but it's still fucking awesome. But he's still like, so good.
It's just because it's also his voice has just gotten ridiculously gravelly in old age, and there's something about that I just he has such a specific tenor and like way of acting and like over exaggerating everything in such a way that like he's absolutely overacting every single line he's ever said as a voice actor is 100% overacting. Somehow it works every time. I love it. I love his performance always.
Oh, it's great, and it's like because I rewatched the entire Cell arc last year,
right?
And in the anime, like. The thing he does, too, is that he sells the transformations of Cell completely through his voice, like making it sound more gravelly or less gravelly or something. Whereas, like, I remember in the dub, they did all these, like, synthesizers on it and stuff.
Well, I think they just had, like, different actors, I think.
They also early sell as like he's through a digitizer or something.
Yeah.
But like they don't need to do that at all. He just can do it, and he's so great. But yeah, he's fun to hear. I mean, it is one of the things that's nice about the story mode is that Dragon Ball probably has like the best cast ever assembled for a fucking anime.
Yeah.
And most of them are still together, luckily, and you know, you get to hear them do their thing, and even if there's lulls in the story, I will never tire of hearing Goku or Krillin or any of these voices. And of course, it's a chance to hear, you know, Bulma kind of one last time with this voice, which is so fucking sad. Can't believe Hiromi Suru is gone, but great at this till the bitter fucking end. She's so good. The localization is weird for me because it is like you'll go through and there will be like 5 minutes of like just straight translation, and then Krillin will say "damn straight," and I'm like, Krillin doesn't say. Does he say that in the dub? I don't think he says that in the dub. I've never heard. I don't really watch the dub much, but I don't think he says that.
Yeah, no, it is definitely like it's not as severe as Final Fantasy 15, but it is something of where I basically stopped paying attention to the English translation, because it is like then some of it feels like I suspect some of that is like they add in like a little bit for like lip flaps sometimes is what it looks like to me. Like I haven't like just watched the cutscenes with. It's
just
dub.
Funny because like you know, obviously this was Bandai Namco doing the localization themselves, but then they had to hire the Funimation voice actors.
Yeah.
You know, Chris Sabat directs the fucking Dragon Ball dub. You think you could ask him, like, does Krillin say damn straight? No? Okay, we can find something else for the lip flap.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's just, it feels like a rush job here and there. There's some issues. It approaches Final Fantasy 15 sometimes, though never crosses that line.
Yeah, but it is enough that, like, I kind of gave up on reading the lines because, I started having that problem that Final Fantasy 15 had of, like, the Japanese just said one thing and the English just said one thing, and I processed neither of them because I tried to process both of them.
And I am not fluent in Japanese the way you are, but I can follow Dragon Ball dialogue, if anything,
it's
pretty well.
Basic, yeah. It's pretty basic as far as things go.
Also, just, I know those voices. I know the terminology Dragon Ball uses.
All the weird bullshit, like Shinto, Noru, like all that shit, yeah.
So there will be moments where I did not have that phenomenon playing Final Fantasy 15, because I didn't, you know, I don't know Japanese that well. But with this, I have had that, what you're talking about, where I'll read it, I'll hear it, what did they say?
What just happened?
Yeah, and I got one of them, the damn straight thing I'm quoting, because that's the one I was able to I had the instinct to grab a screenshot of.
Yeah.
Also, this is just an issue on the PS4, and they've added a setting to turn it off, but every time you go into a cutscene, it pops up the thing of, like, video recording has stopped, and every time you go out, it says video recording has resumed, even if you're not recording a fucking video.
Yeah, I didn't know it, because I turned that setting off forever ago, so I didn't even know it did that.
Because I didn't know you could, it apparently was it wasn't, like, always there, that you could turn that off.
Yeah, I think I turned it off last year or 2 years ago when I started playing Persona 5, because it did that a lot for the Japanese Persona 5.
Yeah, so whenever they added it, but yeah, I was finally able to turn it off. Because it had never bothered me enough to go searching for it.
Yeah.
And it is very buried under menus. I don't know why that's a default thing. It's so bizarre.
Yeah, lots of Japanese games, like, I don't know.
Blocking it is fine. I don't know why it's a default thing in the system of the PS4.
Sure.
I don't care about them. Because all it needs to be is that if you try to share, it tells you no. Like, you don't need the fucking constant notification. Yeah. Anyway, it's fine. Anything else to say about Dragon Ball FighterZ?
Because I do not want to end on the note of, like, the bad localization. I'll also, like, the outside of, like, the writing of the story, there is so much dialogue in the fights that is unique to the fights. That's, like, not just, like, the intros and outros and all that stuff. There's, like, lots of cool stuff with that. But also just, like, you know, depending on, like, what character configurations you have, different lines will trigger, like who you're fighting against, like, Goku will say something different when he's using his Kamehameha if he's fighting Cell, or I don't know if that's, like, an actual example. Or, like, he definitely says something different when he uses his ultimate, like, Super Saiyan 3 move against Kid Buu. Like, he says a different line there. Like, that, and I know that stuff's also obviously replicated if you're listening to the English dub version. And that's something that's really cool, that, like, pay attention to those, like, little lines that characters say and the way that, like, it is tailored to the stage, and it'll be tailored to the enemies you're fighting and who else is on your team. Like, even some of your special moves, like Gohan's special or, like, ultimate attack, will change depending on your team composition. That, like, normally it's him and Goten as Super Saiyan doing the Kamehameha from the Broly movie. But if you have Goku on your team, Goku will pop in. If you have Gotenks in your team, Goten will not be there. Like, that kind of stuff. There's so much attention to detail, like that, and it's such a richly dense game with that kind of stuff. That, like, I suspect that we will never find out like all of everything that is in this game of like those little tiny specific details that are there.
I am so excited to play more in this game and really get to dive into it. The thing that's holding me back is that as much as I am loving Dragon Ball FighterZ, and I wish I had more time to devote to it, Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth Hacker's Memory came out a week before, and just as Dragon Ball came out, I was getting full swing in this game. And full swing means I'm digivolving, I'm de-digivolving, I'm re-digivolving, I'm getting that ABI up, I'm getting that cam up, I'm going down the ladder, I'm going up the ladder, I've got 2 full digifarms, I'm following the story, I'm doing every fucking side quest. Sean, transitioning, Digimon Story, Cyber Sleuth, Hacker's Memory. I don't think this will be a spoiler-heavy discussion, but,
No, I mean, I could spoil some shit for you, but I'm not going to.
Sean, this game is so good.
It's really fucking good. It's 2016 all over again, Jonathan.
It is. I was surprised how much I fell back into the rhythms of this, because it really... It's actually in some ways better than I thought it was going to be when I started, because... we described this last week in describing the game. It's not quite Cyber Sleuth 2. It's like Cyber Sleuth 1.5 or a big, really big, JRPG-sized DLC. Where it's a new campaign on top of the existing game mechanics, environments, all of that stuff, with new Digimon defined and whatnot. But I am still blown away again, as I was in 2016, by the quality of the writing and how much I like the characters and how charming the environments are. And how good just the general design of things is. And of course, that basic system of the battles and the digivolving and your digifarm and all of that is just the best, most robust fighting system I've ever seen in a JRPG. And now that I've seen it in a second full game, I'm really confident saying that.
Especially like it's been a fun experience going from the beginning, knowing it took like an hour or two to get back into okay, that's what all these are all the mechanics of Digimon Story. But going from the ground floor, knowing what the mechanics are and being able to digivolve purposefully. Now it's I know what I plan ahead. I know what I'm doing.
I'm so stressed.
But it exposes all the richness of that game going from the beginning with all that knowledge. And it's especially it's such a sickness. I want to play Digimon Story 1 again. Also, just because it's one of the things that makes it so rewarding to play through, even though it's the same mechanics, it's the same environments, it's a lot of that stuff is all the same. That I'm using 100% completely different Digimon. Partially on purpose. If I had to sort of force myself not to have an Agumon and a Gabumon and digivolve them through, because from I had to sort of beat my childhood self away. So it's you've got a whole game for you. Let me do different ones this time, damn it. And so all of my Digimon I've been trying to use only the ones that are new to Hacker's Memory, but then even then there are so many Digimon that I never used at all in Cyber Sleuth. I got all of them in Cyber Sleuth, but didn't really use most of them in combat.
And I didn't quite get all of them in Cyber Sleuth, though I got most of them. So I have all the new ones, plus ones I didn't quite get the first time around. And there's more than enough added that you can just play with the new ones, just digivolve towards the new ones. They've also done a really smart job taking the new 100 or so new Digimon they've added and parsing them across the existing Digimon.
Yeah, there's because it's a lot of lines of Digivolution that can branch off that are all new ones. That's really fun.
Yeah, so you can totally importing your save is very, very rewarding because it'll color in for you which Digimon you have, and all right, I'm heading for that shadow that I don't know what this Digimon is. That's what I'm going for, and it really does feel like level 2 of what Cyber Sleuth was, because a lot of these new ones are harder to get than they were the first time around.
Yeah.
So it really feels take all your skills from the first one and put them towards a new challenge, but now you get to do that from the beginning, whereas a lot of this didn't open up for me until halfway through Cyber Sleuth 1, and I really hit the ground running with it this time, and it is just I've already done stuff I've just ignored the story for a couple hours and grinded, because grinding in this game is so fun and rewarding, and you don't actually have to grind that much to get big rewards.
Yeah, I one of the first things I did, because I don't think you got into this side of the game, but one of the first things I did was plotted out, okay, I'm going to want, at some point, I'm going to want 3 Platinum Numemons, because they are the ones that increase your XP gain in battle. They basically put in a Digimon that and gave it an ability like 100% so you could grind with it, because like that is the only way to be able to get all the Digimon in the game. Is you need to get a Platinum Numemon, and you need to be like in your Digifarm and doing like build 1,000 yen option and put all the developer know-hows or whatever in there, because that's how you get the Tactician USB, which also increases the XP you get in combat. So like that's fucking do that shit. It's
I'm
important.
taking notes.
Yes.
In an email field. I sent myself an email. All right. How do you get the Platinum Numemon?
Like there's a couple of different ways that you can get there, but yeah,
I'll
like,
look it up.
Obviously, you can get like Numemon up. Like I think Hagudumon is like the easiest one to sort of like get there from. Like I think he's a rookie one that has an easy path up to Gold Numemon, then to Platinum Numemon.
It's so fun, Sean.
Yeah, there's
it's
so much
fun.
It's such a richly dense game with that stuff, and it's something that's fun to be playing this in. It's fun and aggravating to be playing this in FighterZ at the same time, because FighterZ is this like really rich, dense action game, and then Digimon is this really rich, dense, like slow tactical JRPG like story game, and they're so opposite, but like somehow it's like I can switch modes with it. I don't know.
It's hard for me just because it's like Digimon, it's like reading a good book. It's just really hard for me to do anything else when it's on my mind, you know? And if it weren't for the podcast I co-host, I would definitely have Dragon Ball like waiting on a shelf until I was done with Digimon. But that's not how we do things here at the Weekly Stuff Podcast.
No. We destroy ourselves for this podcast. That's the only way to do it.
Indeed. But it's so good, and we'll get back to the gameplay in a second. The thing that has really blown me away is, I think, the quality of the storytelling, the writing, the characters, and I assume that continues through to where you are?
100%, yeah.
I'm blown away.
Yeah, and because it's something of, I was a bit, I think kind of like what you're talking about, I was a bit trepidatious at first of like this is like all these environments are the exact same. Like it's only been like 2 years or something since I played Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth 1. Am I like is it enough time, and like is this going to be different enough? But I think, and especially like knowing that it's a parallel story to the original story, which I feel like a lot of times that is not done that well.
Yeah.
But I think this game 100% strikes the right balance of every once in a while a little like a character will sort of interject from the first game and it like be there a little bit, but mostly it's like for like the first half of the game is particularly, it's a lot of Yugo and Faye, who are characters that you don't interact that much with in Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth 1, particularly Faye, who's a character that gets way more interesting in the back half of Cyber Sleuth 1, but you don't see that much of her from the beginning of the game. And I love getting that like hacker, I think they do a good job of representing that hacker side of it, that you're like on the other side of that curtain. It's like you're the like noble outlaw, not the like detective trying to like sort of sussing all this stuff out and digging into this like these like all these gangs and this multiple level of like hacker like culture. You're kind of like thrown into it and see it from that side.
I agree with that so much. It was one of the points I was going to make, and I don't know if I'd even say I was trepidatious, because if the story had sucked, I'd still have fun playing this.
Right.
I just didn't know the story would be this good, this propulsive, that I would like the characters this much, you know? Because Cyber Sleuth 1 set such a high bar, partially through surprise, you know? Like, we had no idea that game was coming. It's like this weird mix of Pokemon and Persona and other kinds of JRPGs all thrown in a blender, plus the wonderfulness of Digimon, which I am now evangelized to, you know? It is spreading. I know it's already spread to some listeners of the podcast.
Good.
Yes. But anyway, so I just didn't know, and like you get to know, because I think this game has a really, really solid 4-person main cast.
Yeah.
In Keisuke, the main character, is that his default?
Yeah, that's his default.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know if it was randomized at the beginning, so that was my only question. Yeah, so Keisuke, the main character, who is one of the best fucking character designs. I love him so much.
He's the right level of bland. Like, it's so perfect.
I just smile so much looking at him. It is this wonderfully bland character design. It's hard.
He also has some of the best like expressions and animations. So he has that fucking whistling face he makes is the best thing in the game. Every time I have an option with like every time a conversation option looks up, I like scan it to be like, which one is most likely to make him do the stupid whistling face, because that's the one I want to pick.
But yeah, you have him. You have Ryuji, the leader of the Hootie group.
Yeah,
you have Chitose, the other kind of friend, the blonde dude, and you have Erica, who's just a wonderful, fascinating, who like starts out, and it's actually true of all the characters, is that they seem like very typical sort of anime JRPG, modern JRPG stereotypes. Like Erica, in fact, is very similar in some ways to a character from Persona 5 just last year.
Yeah.
And yet, they immediately feel so fleshed out, so well written, so human, that all of that goes to the side, and they're just great characters. And I actually think that just core cast and that compression to it, it's these four people who work in this cafe together, is almost in some ways a stronger core dynamic than what Cyber Sleuth 1 had, which is a little more diffuse. Like, they're all great characters, but they're not all together all at the same time.
Yeah, because the way that Cyber Sleuth 1 was structured was like that first half, you're kind of like bouncing from like Nokia to Sanada to Yuko, like you're kind of like bouncing between all those characters. And you're right, like here you have this core cast that and all the main like major story stuff, they're all there, and then for a lot of the side stuff, like one or two of them will also be involved.
It just does such a great job of making you feel this character's kind of daily life, where he, had an okay existence. This hacking the plot is that he was hacked, lost his account, which in this world, which is sort of like, Ready Player One if it were good. Whereas there's a VR world, but it's not just a dude from the 80s masturbating to a DeLorean.
It's Ready Player One, but without Eddie's references, and instead it's all Digimon, which is a vast improvement.
Vast improvement. And so you have this VR world, and since he's lost his account, he's kind of an outcast now. And like he gets this new subculture with this hacker group. He's gaining these friends. You feel like you gain the confidence as Keisuke gains the confidence. You make these friends as he makes these friends. It's a really good, solid group. And then, as you were saying, the perspective the game chooses to use of like what's a side of that first game that we didn't really see things through. Like we saw, but we didn't go behind their eyes. And that's the whole hacker subculture, which is this huge part of Cyber Sleuth, but you're always on the outside of. Putting you on the other side of that curtain, I agree, like, it immediately gives this game a reason for existing. Because this world is rich enough to support other perspectives, and the perspective they've found is one that is 100% worth playing and feels essential if you liked the first one.
Yeah, and it's so much so that I hope if they make another Digimon Story... I hope they make another Digimon Story game, but I hope if they make another one that, like, it's set basically in the same, like, sort of pocket Digimon universe or whatever, like, because obviously the Digimon franchise has a lot of different, like, weird universes and continuities and stuff, and there is, like, something about the culture and society of this Cyber Sleuth that is, like, a lot of it is very, very similar to modern day, but, like, it's just got, like, it's like if VR went fucking nuts, right? And it's... Which
like
is
if VR were popular.
Yeah, and it's like that, but it's not quite cyberpunk. And I think maybe that's why I like it. Is it's like it's a cyberpunk setting that isn't cyberpunk, and that's fucking cool.
Well, there's so many places where, like, in this kind of story, most people turn left and they've turned right. So, like, okay, we have a virtual world. Most people turn left into dystopia. They've turned right into, it's the same world, but now we go online more.
Yeah.
Or, like... in a lot of, it's like, if you go into the online world, it's chaos and everyone is doing wish fulfillment. That's the left turn. That's Ready Player One. That's not this game at all. The whole idea of Eden is that it is this separate space where you can do these things, but you still have to have your body. You have to be you. Another turn is that most people, like the hacker subcultures, are bad or nefarious. In these games, they're trying to keep order in Eden, and because they know there are nefarious forces and they want to, quench those down. All of those choices make this feel like a work of the moment, but also that kind of transcends the moment in that it's not falling into any of those narrative traps. And I think Hacker's Memory is very smart in going into those pockets of the universe that were not the main focus of the first game.
Yeah, and it has the same basic structure as Cyber Sleuth 1 did, of like down to like that I'm like basically halfway through the game, like the larger plot thing, it does a similar thing of like and it's I don't, this is not a spoiler at all, like Cyber Sleuth 1 takes like a pretty dark turn in the middle, right? And like it gets serious in the back half, and like that's after like a certain big event happens in the middle of the story, and like Hacker's Memory kind of does like the same thing around the same event but from a totally different perspective, which is because that's kind of the stuff I just did, and that was really cool to get to that part of the game and see like how the events of, and I haven't gotten all the way there yet because it's like that, like the last thing that just happened was like on the beginning of that sort of big turn that the first game made. But it's like interesting to like and fun to start approaching the way that like that the world shifts dramatically over the course of the first game, and like seeing that from the perspective of these characters that are so much more kind of like ground level in a weird way. That's like they're like objective, like all that like weird eater stuff and the digitization of the real world, like all that is happening like in the periphery, and characters kind of like comment on it occasionally, but it's not like a part of their daily life. And it's interesting to see like they're just kind of like caught blindsided like a couple of times by what is going on in the main plot, that like the character of the first game is sort of motivating those actions, and you're sort of seeing the ripples of it. Like it's really smartly done. It's
very smartly done. And if I had any trepidation early on, it's that I thought there were a bit too many of the side things, and then they don't do that much after that point. Like I've only had one fight with an eater so far, for instance.
Right.
And I realized, okay, they had to get some of those out of the way first to show that, like, remind you, this is what's going on, but that's not your story. And so when you hit those things, it really feels like that's a fun, like, okay, that's going off to the side, but they've done a lot of the groundwork to make this story of Keisuke and Hootie and all their friends and everything, that is its own world and its own story going on, and it feels like it has its own reason for existence. And I think that's the biggest challenge in a parallel story like this.
Yeah.
And they've done it very, very well. So that's just, I love the story of Cyber Sleuth 1. It's one of the things that makes that game so magical, and one of the great JRPGs of the generation, if not ever. And this game just picks up qualitatively where it left off, and that's amazing.
Yeah. It also, like, I like the... Because it's that same thing of, like, with the first game, that I'm at that hack part where stuff is getting, like, really serious. I'm looking back on, like, basically where you are in the game, where it's, like, a lot of side missions, and things are a bit more diffuse, and it's, like, a lot of fun stuff, and you're like, the good old days.
Yeah, no.
They were just, like, I could just go, like, get a request from some weird old man to go, like deal with something that has to do with the Digimon on some weird server somewhere.
It is, like, I'm really savoring it, because I remember my experience with Cyber Sleuth 1, where I really love that second half of the game, and it has to be there, and it's great. But there is so much of, like, that game wins you over with the charm of the first half, with its episodic, like, detective storytelling, and the quality of the side quests. And they've done that all over again so well. The side quests in this game, like the cases that you take on, are so good. They do feel very tailored to the new story, where they're not exactly like the detective work you did the first time around. They're more built around hacking and the Eden subculture and some of that. But they're so much fun. Like the one, I tweeted about one of them because it was so good, which is the disappearing elevator one.
Yeah.
Where basically you find out there's this digital world existing, like coexisting in the mall in Nakano Broadway. And you go through all of that, and it's so well written. It's so fun to play. It's like a great 20-minute anime episode.
Yeah, and it's something that, like, now that I've played Yakuza, I can kind of see that. I think, like, the way that those side quests work is actually really heavily influenced by Yakuza, because they do the same thing of having this really sort of limited presentation model that they stretch to the absolute limits to, like, the most powerful effect they possibly can get. Because it's like the bulk of the story is conveyed in those, like, little, like, kind of talking head scenes, which is a pretty sort of, like, constrained presentation model.
Yeah.
But what they managed to do with that shit is so impressive in some places. Like, there's an ongoing sort of side quest thing that happens over the course of the game with you probably have seen at least the first one, of a guy or like some entity dressed as Mr. Nabbit, the mascot, in the real world. And, like, there are quests that he, like, because that actually, I love, that's one of the first things that happens in the game, is they foreshadow that quest line when you run into the occult club from the high school that were in the first game, and they foreshadow that, like, it's like a weird side quest you keep on revisiting, and the shit they do with the presentation model, and those ones in particular, is like, I can't believe they're able to get, like, this much comedy out of such a basic model. It's really fucking impressive.
I think it's just, I think Cyber Sleuth 1 was a big reminder of this for me, to kind of recenter us in, a generation that has had a lot of chat about technology and graphics. And all that stuff's great.
Yeah.
But this game does it for me too, of like, right, what you need is the writing, and you need, charm and spirit and all that stuff. The technology, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Even with, this game is like 2 gigabytes, and it has so
it's
much.
It's like 0.5 gigabytes bigger than the first game.
Yes, it is, because they have to add those extra Digimon models. But that's it, and it's this tiny little game that has so much in it, because if your writing and your acting and your models are good and expressive enough, it's like, right, like Final Fantasy VI or something is still hailed as a masterpiece, and that was on the Super Nintendo, and that hasn't aged for people. You go back and play it, it didn't need all those bells and whistles. Same with like a Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth. It can convey everything it needs to convey with what it has, and it is an amazing achievement on that level. Other side quests I've loved, There's the one about the woman creating her own digital aquarium.
That one's great, yeah.
That one is haunting.
Yes, like with the first game, most of the side quests are very funny, and then every once in a while you get one that's like, this is fucking dark as shit.
Yep, and just a good yarn, like a good short story.
Yeah.
There was one I did where you have to do some hacking work for your old schoolmates and their like computer club that does a good job characterizing Keisuke, the main character, and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just... everything I do in these games is so fun and it is so charming, and I'm always having a good time. It is, if you would like to, if you haven't played these before and you don't want to devote the time to just playing this on PS4, I also have to say that it does work very well as a portable game on Vita because of that format where you can play in these like little 10, 15, 20-minute chunks and you'll feel like you did something substantial. This is not the kind of JRPG where you have to sit down for like 5-hour chunks to feel like you've made any progress. And it's one of the nice things, I think. Yeah,
no, definitely. I think like how I've managed that, like having fighters and this at the same time, is it's nice. Like start with fighters, like play like 30 minutes of it, but I get up and it's like now it's like dive into Digimon Story and calm down and cool down. Yeah,
it's a great game to relax to as well.
Yeah.
All right,
it's a good game.
Sean,
yes,
Adventures in Digivolutions.
Okay,
what stories do we want to tell of the madness that is the Digivolution, de-Digivolution, all that stuff tree?
Yeah, I mean, right now, like, how have you gotten like any Mega Digimon, like the 4th stage yet?
I don't think I've gotten that far because a lot of those involve like ABI things where you have to go down and up.
Yeah, back up.
And there are a lot in this game that require pretty high ABIs. Like I very quickly got Shoutmon. And he has a Mega Evolution that requires 80 ABI, and I'm in the 40s now, but going between him and Karomon or whatever. Koromon, and it is tough, but there are... Yeah, I'm juggling a lot of balls. Like, I got pretty obsessed the other night, and I had to, like, remind myself, like, there's time, you'll be okay to get all these Digimon, because there's a lot of just grappling with, all right, I have to put this one back down, remember that you have to put him back to that one, get there... But it's so much fun because even if you mess something up, it'll lead you somewhere else interesting. Yeah,
there's always it always feels like there's another Digimon. Like I love that they've added like a really big chunk of new ones here because I always feel like when I just feel like fuck it, I don't want to go out to my thing like my little like digipad or whatever in my menu and like track through and be like, okay, well, what if I de-digivolve you into this one and then go up like this tree? Is there a new one there? I just say like fucking just like pick this one, and like eventually there will be something new at the end of it. But yeah, there's like I have that Shoutmon one is one I've started working on now. Like I kind of put that off for a long time because one thing that has happened to me is that thing of like I'll be like, okay, I figured out what I want to do with you. I'm going to de-digivolve you into this form, and then like eventually you're going to go up this way and be this guy, and then like 2 hours later, I come back. It's like, what was I doing with you again? Like, I like got super focused on some other project, and I finally made Dino Beamon, and he was cool. And I do not remember what I was doing with you, little buddy. So I'm going to turn you into this guy. And then, like another hour later, I'm like, oh fuck, that's what I was going to turn you into this one. Like shit.
I will say one thing I've butted up against is that, I have a pretty high skill ceiling at this point with this because I've played all of Cyber Sleuth 1. But they do jump you back all the way down to having like the limited memory in your party and you have to find the Digifarms again. I don't mind that. I wish it happened faster because I'm already at a point where I'm brushing up against that pretty hard because I'm working with it so fast, and I wish it advanced a little faster.
Yeah, you're right on the cusp of like that picking up really quick because it's like around chapter 7 or 8 is where that like you start getting a lot of memory really quickly. Yeah, because I had the same feeling you did where you were, and it's like now I'm like, okay, I'm fine.
Okay, good. Yeah. So not a huge problem, just something to note. Yeah, I also like so many of the new Digimon are so cool. Like it feels like a lot of the crazy ones they saved for this one. Like the other night I had this Digimon, I forget which one evolves into it, but I had him in my party and I was having so much fun, and my brother was actually watching me play because he's so curious what the fuck this game is. And I digivolved, and it was to one of the shadow ones. I didn't know what it was going to become, and it became Triceramon, the Triceratops Digimon. And I just put my hands in and went, yeah, Triceratops, because it was so cool. I was like, I can't wait to use this Digimon. And there's just so many moments where you're just so happy, where like it'll upend your plans too. Of like, I don't really need to use you in my party for like my whole grand plans of Digivolution, but I'm going to put you in my party because I want to fight with you, brother.
I want to see what your new, like your special move is. I want to see all that stuff.
Yep.
I think my favorite one I found that's like obviously my favorite one is my main Digimon, who the end of his Digivolution line goes at such an incredible other direction. His Mega Digivolution is so good.
The only thing I have to do now is level him to that point, but I've got the ABI and everything ready.
Yeah, it's exciting. He goes in a different direction because he doesn't have a normal Mega Digivolution. You kind of jump onto a different new line of Digimon they added in and go straight to that Mega form. It's very good though, and I laughed really hard when I saw what it looked like.
So it's like Goromon is the first one, right? Goromon, Icemon. And then Meteormon.
Yeah,
and then
it goes somewhere else, and it's very good.
I'm so excited.
And Meteormon realizes something about his identity that he's been grappling with for a while, and it's very satisfying to see him come out of his shell.
I've had to put Meteormon in the farm just for a moment because he just needs to level, and I have a lot of other ones I need to do more active stuff with.
Yeah.
But yes, and he has a big memory chunk right now.
Yeah. So I love what my main Digimon turned into. But my favorite one is one I've started using a bit more is what is it? Because it's a ground Dramon digivolves into brake Dramon, like brakes on a car brake. That's not what he looks like though. He looks like a giant construction tractor with the big arm with the scoop on it, but with evil eyes and big drill tails. And he looks like a weird Transformers spinoff or something. And he's so silly, but he's so good because he's a very evil looking Digimon. And his special attack is he just goes apeshit and just starts biting like crazy, and it does a shit ton of damage because it does 8 attacks that have a really high chance of critting. So I've had a lot of fun using him because because particularly his walking animation when you're just in the normal walking around in the dungeons is so silly looking because it's that's a Digimon that clearly whoever designed him didn't have any idea how this Digimon actually locomoted, so they had to come up with something for the 3D model, and it's very good looking. I like Brake Digimon a lot.
Is it just me, or are the walking animations better in this one?
They're good. Yeah.
There's so many everyone just is so unique in how they move around the world. I love it.
Yeah, I think they committed to having more of the Digimon models actually walk and fewer of them just sort of hover, which is what a lot of them did in the first. Some of them still do in this one, but there's a lot of ones that do walk. I also I don't remember what his name is because I've already digivolved him, but there's one that I think Ice Devimon digivolved into this Cthulhu looking dude who's just this little anthropomorphic octopus guy with that looks really gross, and his attack was he waved his tentacle arm and it was just blah, blah, blah. It was very good. I love Digimon. The designs are so crazy. They're so fun.
It's such a reward every time you get to that next stage because you know you're going to get something crazy and unexpected and fun and awesome to then go play with. It's rewarding on so many levels and it never feels like it slows down. I'm at one of those inflection points with my Digimon where I think my party, everyone is at level 1 because they've either just digivolved to another level or de-digivolved and have to get back up. And I'm just so excited to get back out there and start leveling.
Yeah, because then you do one fight and then all of your Digimon level 10 times. It's the most gorgasmic sound in video games of just the level up sound on top of itself 50 times over.
It's the best. The music is still great.
Yeah.
There's not a ton of new music, but what's there is so good.
Yeah.
And one thing we haven't talked about at all are the domination battles, which are new.
Right, yes. Yeah, that's the main new gameplay feature.
I really like them.
Yeah.
It's a miniature, tactical RPG kind of thing with Digimon battles thrown in, and they're really fun.
Yeah, yeah. And I like that you they pace them out well because I think they're very slow. And the one complaint I would have is I wish some of the animations could play faster or something because once you've done a bunch of them, it's
sure,
okay, I get the idea. But they do make sure that they're spaced out well in the story, so you're not just doing a bunch of them back to back unless you want to do the hacker side missions or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
yeah,
they're
good.
It's fun. They give you some good XP as well, which is nice.
And I think you're probably right on the cusp of they introduced some complications in that format and a couple of different kind of versions of those. Okay. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the one where you have to wipe out all the bad Digimon.
Yeah, they do a couple of other things with the mechanic.
It's cool. It's a nice. I didn't really expect that to be there, but it's definitely a nice addition that makes this feel again even more sort of its own thing.
Yeah, and definitely they sort of tie it into that idea of we're hackers. We're not. We're we're in cyberspace with weird tiles that hooking up nodes and shit.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how much more we're going to talk about this game in the coming weeks. Like, certainly once we're both completely done with it, we'll have to have a little spoiler cast. Obviously, we don't need to go into the same depth on the mechanics and everything because it's mostly the same.
Yes, you can go back to the podcast from 2 years ago and listen to my insane ramblings, and that's all you need to know.
There are many episodes where we talked about Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth, and, you know, if you're listening to this casually and you don't really know what we're talking about, and you have any inclination of enjoying JRPGs, give Cyber Sleuth 1 a try. Don't start with Hacker's Memory. That's the one thing I would say, is it's not that standalone. You want to know the first game. But Cyber Sleuth 1 is constantly on sale on PSN. I could not recommend it more. I am. Some people might think I'm joking with my Game of the Year 2016. No, I am utterly sincere. It was easily my favorite game that year and has only grown in my estimation with time. Hacker's Memory is, of the 2 games I've played in 2018, it's so far my Game of the Year.
Yeah, it is definitely something of like I held and hold the original Cyber Sleuth in really high esteem, but it's like playing this reminded me, it's like, yeah, no, that game is really that good. Like it is like I'm with you that I think it can maybe sound like, because nobody else is talking about these fucking games, that it may sound like we're being facetious or like it's a silly thing. Like, no, like they're great fucking games.
No, I'll give you my honest opinion. I think it's the best ongoing JRPG series not called Persona. At this exact moment, in this exact generation, because I think it was better than Final Fantasy 15, so it knocks that one out. Like, it's that good. You should play them. And I hope, and clearly, like, they have made a bigger impact than past Digimon story games made because of the success of, like, the PS4 and stuff.
Yeah.
And I just hope they keep making them. And I'm very curious to see what the next proper Digimon story is that's not a Cyber Sleuth spin-off like this.
Yeah, because, like, from what I understand, the developers has basically intimated that, like, this game was like okay, we're really working on Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth 2, but, like, we have, like, the foundations and, like, all these models, environments, and stuff. Like, we can get, like, the story team and those people working on, like, a, like, spin-off of the first game and, like, have all, like, the main, like, designers and engineers, like, working full-time on Digimon Story 2. Yeah. So if that is really what they're doing, I'm very excited.
Very excited.
Yeah.
It's one of the great surprises of this generation. And one of the great things about this generation that you have, because of the success of the PS4 and the resurgence of Japan in the game industry, there's this outlet where a game like this would not have come west before. And certainly not localized this well or this lovingly. Like, it's not dubbed, but it's written so well. Like, props again to the English localization team. They did a great job with it. And yeah, it's just, I love that it's here. I love that it's easily accessible. If you want to play it on Vita and PS4, it does kind of suck that you have to buy it twice. But it does have a very nice cross-save function, makes it super easy. Like, it's not the Switch, that's the easiest, where it's just the same piece of hardware, but it's as easy as it can be across 2 platforms. So, yeah, I love it so goddamn much, and I'm so happy to be playing it, and great way to start the year in games.
Yes. Also, this is something that I don't think, because it was not really a thing on this podcast at the time of the first Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth, but I have now realized that that Mikagura lady, the lady who runs the Digifarm area, do you know who voices her?
Mayumi Sawashiro?
Miyuki Sawashiro is her
Miyuki
name.
Sawashiro.
Don't fucking misname her, you piece of crap.
Say it again?
Miyuki Sawashiro.
Sawashiro. Okay, sorry.
Is the, like, weird magic interdimensional lady who, from, like, looking at the wiki page about her, is in, like, every Digimon game somehow. That is who that is. And that
she doesn't talk much voice.
Yeah,
so.
like, I think you've only heard, like, 2 lines of dialogue from her. She comes back in, like, a side mission later and has more dialogue to, like, fully cement, like, is that? Yeah, no, that is 100% who that is. That's amazing. So somehow she keeps on popping up on this podcast. She was, like, popping up on this podcast before I even knew to mention her on this podcast.
So, hey, now, Sean, you have at least one contender for your Miyuki Sawashiro award for peculiar excellence.
Yeah, well, considering that the Persona 3 dancing game is coming out later this year, there's going to be another, because you know who voices Elizabeth in that game?
Wow!
Yeah, huh? You know all those movies we watched? Yeah, huh?
Wow.
Miyuki Sawashiro. She's the best.
Thanks again for tuning into this week's episode. Please remember to rate and review the show on iTunes, and to follow us on Twitter at Jonathan Lack.
And at Sean the Chapman. That's all one word. Sean the Chapman.
We'll see you guys next time.
Don't forget, Hatsune Miku. She protects the world.